I will now call to order the regular city council meeting of January 8th, 2024. Members of the public are invited to attend in-person meetings in council chambers. Public access to the meeting is also available by telephone by using the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. Meetings are broadcast on Channel 8 for Comcast and Xfinity subscribers and on the city's YouTube channel online. Joanna, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Leidy,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Luke Manharamasa,
Here.
Councilmember Burns,
Here.
Councilmember Jaramillo is running late, Councilmember Kondo,
Here.
Councilmember Roper,
Here.
Councilmember Goff,
Here.
Councilmember Nowicki,
Here.
Councilmember Walker.
Here.
Thank you.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Manager Guyer, are there any responses to resident inquiry?
And not this evening, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? Okay. All right, we are going to start with 2 interviews this morning. So we have some youth commissioners ready to go. I am really afraid I'm going to mispronounce this name. Anusha, is that correct? Anusha Kunal?
And unfortunately, good evening, Mayor and Council. We have not seen either of our Youth Commission applicants yet this evening.
okay.
We were expecting them, so we will let staff know if they happen to arrive. Otherwise, we will reschedule both of their interviews.
Fantastic,
That end of
okay.
winter break scheduling might have gotten the best of them.
Yeah, that happens. Yeah.
Thank you.
We are ready to go. Okay, well, keep us posted. All right, presentation, the first one, Youth Addiction Poster Contest Recognition. So I'd like you to join me down front, and we have some celebrations.
So the Youth Commission is going to go through the presentation and council will congratulate the winners.
For sure. Thank you so much. Well, good evening, Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and council members. Tonight, we are presenting the awards for the Northglenn Youth Addiction Poster Contest. This was a recent initiative held by the Northglenn Youth Commission in order to commemorate active efforts and also active recognizing the current landscape regarding opiate use and also just regular addiction within the Northglenn community and surrounding areas. So tonight, about a month ago, we were able to actually vote on different submissions that we received all around Adams 12 and also from residents of Northglenn themselves, and they were specifically from students who are grades 6 through 12. It was a very competitive pool of applicants, and we were really amazed with the quality of work that was presented to us to the Northglenn Youth Commission and also all voting members, including city staff. The posters were judged off of 4 main constraints, including originality, also the ability to reproduce the poster for future contest marketing, and also the ability to convey the message of youth addiction in our community, and also continuing with content accuracy. So with that being said, our first place winner for the Northglenn Youth Addiction Poster Contest is Rico Burrows. Drugs are never worth it. Yeah, you can join them. Rico Burrows is a high school student. Her desired topic for the poster contest was regarding specifically overdose of opiate misuse within our community. The entire exigence of the piece was making sure that our community is able to think twice before specific opiate use, with specifically more of fentanyl and other opioids within our community. Our second place winner is Maya Reno with Support to Grow. Her desired topic is regarding drug addiction and help. Her poster is extremely unique and it also creates a more positive outlook and making sure that there's support available within the community. This addresses specifically not really the fear aspect of preventing opiate use, but also just creating that positive and more supportive atmosphere for making sure that there are resources within the community that youth can navigate to when they're in trouble or they know someone that needs help. And our third place winner for tonight is Your Choice, Your Future by Colton Hellquist. He had a really amazing piece that was really created through digital art, and it was really inspirational on kind of the way that pieces were really compiled regarding graphic design and also making sure that a lot of different facts regarding opiate use within our community is really well reflected and that there's also another sense of navigation and accountability to opiate use. A lot of teens within our community do not know the possible effects of fentanyl use, possible effects of vaping and other nicotine related products and stuff like that. And so these type of art pieces really were really touching to the Youth Commission and really checked off all those boxes that we're looking for. So thank you so much, and yeah.
Okay, I can tell you back row, I'm gonna need you guys to smush, get closer. So I'll work on that now. All right. Okay. Go. Great. Everybody's.
Cassie, come on, why don't you go on now?
This side would be great. Gotta balance it out around the end. There we go, perfect, good job. All right, 1, 2, 3. Keep smiling, I'm taking a bunch. All right, thanks everyone.
That was great. Thank you to the Youth Commission for sponsoring that contest as well.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Thank you. Okay, our next presentation tonight is the Colorado Communities for Climate Action. So Jacob Smith, the Executive Director of CC4CA, will present. Oh, along with a special guest. Hello.
Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, it's great to be here this evening. Staff, thank you all very much for the invitation. My name is Jacob Smith. I'm the Executive Director of Colorado Communities for Climate Action, and I'm here with my colleague, Anita. Anita will chat as well, but one of the interesting things about CC4CA is that everybody on the staff is either a former local elected or former local staff. So Anita was the mayor in Westminster, I was the mayor in Golden, and it just means everybody on the team is coming from the same kind of work you all are doing and has some sense of what that means and the challenges of that work. So we've got a little slide deck, and I think I can control that from here. Oh, that worked, okay. So we're just gonna give you a real quick, we know some of the folks, some of you all are new, and even those of you that aren't new, it's been a while since we've been here, so figured we'd give you a quick overview, refresher on what CC4CA is and some of the work we've been doing over the past year or so, and then happy to answer any questions that any of you might have. The coalition it's a coalition of local governments, and it's purpose-built. It was created for the very explicit purpose of advocating for stronger climate policy at the state level primarily on behalf of local governments that want stronger state climate policy. And it started really with a handful of jurisdictions that felt like as individual jurisdictions, they just didn't have much of a voice at the Capitol, at the Air Quality Control Commission, the PUC, all of those state policy venues. And a few jurisdictions got together and began speaking with one voice. The logic was that should give them more influence, and it did, very much so. And in fact, it continued to grow. We're at 42 members now, counties and municipalities across the state. Half our members are Western Slope. It's a big range of population sizes and types of communities, and they're all communities that want the state to do a better and better job on climate policy. The bulk of what we do is that first bullet up top. We really do exist. We are purpose-built to be an advocacy organization on behalf of local governments, and that's where we spend most of our time. That's where we spend most of our time doing the work that we do. And some of that is at the legislature. A lot is really in the legislative session, starts just in a few days. But we also do a lot in the regulatory venues like the PUC and Air Quality Control Commission. We also spend a bunch of time just with the state agencies themselves, the governor's office and the agencies that are doing often a lot of implementation that's really consequential. So there may not be regulatory, but they're coming up with the guidelines that will govern how a grant program is run. And that's often very consequential to local governments. And then we also do some of the other things. The federal side, I'll just mention that briefly. We don't do a lot on the federal side, but we do some when there's an opportunity we feel like where we can actually affect the outcome. We will pull folks together and focus there, and we have had really good success there. We're very targeted there. But BIL and IRA, the two big federal funding packages, this is a good example of that. Senator Hickenlooper it became clear he was going to be a really key figure in that, and we put our members, so folks on our elected officials across the membership, reached out to his office over and over again to make sure he knew how important it was to local governments, and he ended up becoming this really key figure in convincing Senator Manchin to support. So that's a good example of where we felt like local governments really might have an actual impact at the federal level, so we engaged there. And then the other things are really designed to be resources for you all. We do lots of trainings and workshops and briefings, trying to offer opportunities for you all, to whatever extent you're interested in, to learn about how the legislature works and how to be an effective advocate there, or get the latest on the science of climate change at the local level in Colorado, or whatever the range of things that we offer. A lot lately has been focused on those federal grant programs because there's so much money available, and they're so difficult for local governments to access those dollars. So that's been a real focus. And I'll just say on those resources, it is often the case that the things that we do come from you all. Like, we'll have a member or multiple members that ask us, it'd be really helpful if you guys did a briefing on X, and we'll pull that together. So keep that in mind if there's ever anything we can do that's helpful to you along those lines. This is a list of the members. I think you all have the deck, so I won't linger on this, but it gives you a sense of the geographic diversity and the diversity of size and type of community. Really simple organizational structure. The board is made up of a representative from every one of our members. And I'll tell you, as somebody who comes out of the nonprofit and local government worlds, the idea of a board of directors with 42 people, each of whom represents an entire jurisdiction, it doesn't sound like it should work very well. And it's crazy how well it works. It's actually the best nonprofit board I've ever worked with. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that this is such a focused organization. You don't join unless you are aligned. In fact, to join, you have to pass a resolution that expresses support for our policy positions. And that helps make sure that every jurisdiction that joins really is aligned and is committed to the same policy outcomes. And it ends up working extremely well, far better than you could imagine, I could imagine. We've got the three major committees. Finance is just like a normal financial oversight and budget committee that you would see with a nonprofit. The policy committee oversees the advocacy work, kind of writ large, all the pieces of it. And then we have a legislative committee that really focuses on the legislative session and taking positions on bills on behalf of the membership. And then we'll occasionally have these ad hoc working groups, which are, if you're not, like in this case, Councilor Goff is your main rep here, but any of you are welcome to be involved at any point that you'd like. And the ad hoc working groups are often a place where folks who are not the main board rep or a committee rep that want to plug in, or it's often a good place to do that. So we'll keep you posted as those opportunities unfold. And I'm just going to mention a tiny bit about, we're both going to talk a little bit about some of the big highlights of the past year. I'm going to focus on the legislative session last year, 2023, which at the beginning did not look like it was going to be a big year for climate. In fact, the 2-3 years before, the three previous years really had all been really big years on climate legislation. And we got a bunch of bills passed that were pretty transformative. And it just didn't look like 2023 was going to look like that. And we ended up with enough excuse me, enough legislators that were fired up enough and enough constituents like you all reaching out to your legislators. The result was we actually did end up passing a bunch of really meaningful bills. And I'll just mention a couple of examples. The SB 291 utility regulation was a bill that was designed to rein in some of the ways in which really Xcel's customers sometimes don't end up getting treated fairly from our perspective, and certainly not from a climate perspective. Xcel has had a system where when the price of natural gas would spike during the winter, they would just pass that full cost on to the ratepayers, which meant Xcel had no incentive to design their system and run their system in a way that wouldn't result in huge increases in natural gas prices. SB 291, among other things, takes some of the cost of the natural gas, those spikes, and puts it on Xcel's shoulders. So Xcel now has actual skin in the game. So they have a real financial incentive to care about what is happening with natural gas prices and how that affects where they decide to generate power and where they decide to invest in power. So it's a good example of where that's a confluence of really important policy from a climate perspective as well as from a consumer protection and ratepayer perspective. Another example, HB 1272, it included a whole bunch of tax incentives for things like heat pumps and e-bikes and the kinds of things that we know are going to reach price parity, and the trajectory is very clear, but they're not there yet. And making it easier for folks that might want to invest in something like that to do so and bring the price down so it's competitive with what the alternatives might be. And that's particularly important, certainly from a broad try to deploy these technologies perspective, but it's also really important from an equity perspective to make sure that the access to cleaner technologies that save you money over time, over the life of the house or the vehicle or whatever, that those are accessible to everybody. It's not income-based or wealth-based. And I'll just mention one last one here, the land use bill. And this is an interesting one for a reason I didn't mention yet, which is not only is the board 42 members in size, but every single jurisdiction essentially has veto power over positions we take on legislation or those bigger policy positions that govern all of the work we do. And that sounds even crazier, except that all the work we put into making sure folks are aligned, and then we go through a really thorough process when we update the policy statement to figure out where are folks at and how can we make changes that everyone can live with. And we, in the end, don't make changes unless everybody's okay with it. And that happens on legislation too. SB 213 last year was the big land use bill, hugely controversial. And it was a weird bill for us in that there were a lot of things in the intent that aligned for us. A lot of what the governor and legislators were trying to do to improve affordable housing could have really big climate impacts. But the bill also involved this massive usurpation, if I can use that word, of local land use control. So it was hugely controversial, and our members were actually split. We had members that supported the bill and a lot of members that very fiercely did not support the bill. And that was a great instance where, because we had members that opposed either one of those positions, we wouldn't take a position in support or opposition, but we were able to carve out a really nuanced position that didn't express support or opposition to the bill, but it said, if it passes, here's a bunch of amendments we think need to be in it, so that if it passes, local governments are actually able to implement it. And we put a lot of effort into those amendments. We actually got many of the amendments we were after. So had the trimmed down version of the amended version of the bill passed, might not have been great from the perspective of local governments in general, but at least it was shifted in ways that would have made a real difference for how we all do the things that we do. So it's a good example of where that unanimous consent and the general tenor of how the coalition works together and the kind of influence that you all bring when you show up and testify or you are in meetings with the governor or cabinet members or other legislators, that you all as local elected officials have this really powerful voice that they are all very responsive to.
All right, this one's forward.
I think it's, yeah.
Okay. All right, it worked for me too. Hello, everyone. My name's Anita Seitz, and I served on the Westminster City Council for 8 years. I'm just a neighbor down the road from you. In fact, my kids were going to go to Boondocks today for their last day of winter break, so didn't get their rooms cleaned on time. But I just want to say thank you so much for lending President Goff's leadership to CC4CA this year. She has done an excellent job representing CC4CA in North Glen at the state capitol and during rulemakings, and we've just really enjoyed her leadership. I want to talk to you about that other bucket of policy. So we all know about the legislative, the legislature and what goes on at the Capitol. And oftentimes, we're so successful there. In fact, I would say CC4CA has had our fingerprints on every single major climate bill that has passed since our existence, which created a very busy 2023 for us. Typically, we have one or two rulemakings at the Air Quality Control Commission that we follow or are actually a party to. This year, we had 7. So it was very busy, and we really leaned on our members, like Councilmember Goff, who provided testimony for us, and we really appreciated that. Before you see a list of a lot of, this is actually not comprehensive to all of the different regulatory and rulemakings that we participated in, but I wanted to highlight a few that I think are particularly interesting to North Glen. The first two deal with transportation electrification. And so we know in Colorado, up until this most recent inventory, transportation was the largest source of greenhouse gas. Large, medium, and heavy-duty trucks have an outsized contribution to those greenhouse gases, but also to ozone and NOx pollution. And so we helped pass a rule in Colorado that increases the requirements of vehicles that will be sold. So this is on the dealers, not on individuals. Nobody's forced to buy an electric truck or purchase anything they don't want to, but they need to be made available. And by having a sales requirement that it gives a strong signal to the market that this is going to be required. We followed other states that did it, and it will have a huge impact on ozone pollution, public health and safety. And I know as a community that's bisected by I-25, this is really going to impact the lungs of your constituents. Additionally, advanced clean cars. If I remember correctly, I think at least one of you have an electric car. I believe the mayor. So this is just kind of the continuation of the advanced clean car standards that were passed back in 2018 and 19, where new vehicles that are sold, more and more of them will be electric or zero emission vehicles. And again, for those that are still internal combustion engines on both the big trucks and on the cars, just enhancing the emission standards on those. Another one that I want to talk about that I think is relevant, again, is the ozone SIP. So that stands for Ozone State Implementation Plan. And as many of you may know, Colorado has been out of attainment or in non-attainment for the Clean Air Act for our air quality and our ozone quality. And that's particularly true here in the Front Range. And so each year the state has to come up with a state implementation plan that says how we're going to get into compliance. Ozone has major health impacts on people, premature death. I mean, it's a significant contributor to mortality and morbidity for our residents. And so in 2023, while we haven't solved it, we did get some control measures included in it that will make steps. Kind of going backwards to the legislature, we're still working on it. It's not done, and there was an interim committee that was set up, and again, President Goff came and spoke to the interim committee to really talk about that human impact on your residents. Now I'm going to switch. Does anyone have questions about any of these other rulemakings? I'd be happy to answer them. Okay, then I'm going to talk to you about what I think is the biggest value proposition of Colorado Communities for Climate Action, and that's making it incredibly easy for our members to meaningfully participate in policy that they care about. So we do everything we can to take the burden of advocacy out of the equation. We will let you know what are the different rulemakings that are coming up, what is legislation that you care about, and help you participate. So that can be something like providing testimony at a committee down at the legislature. It can be submitting an op-ed, which I know many of you have also done. Thank you, Mayor. It can be as simple as writing an op-ed to the local paper. But it really has an impact. The people of this community chose you. They believe in you. You represent their values, and you're here to lead for them. And when I served on city council, I cared deeply about many issues, but it wasn't exactly obvious for me how I could lend my station, my title, to make an impact. And that's what we try to do. So with that, I am going to, and this is some examples of different ways that we've engaged. You'll see some op-eds that have been published, LTEs. There's a group of us testifying at the Air Quality Control Commission, at the state legislature, at a committee building. So it's definitely a team sport. And I think I flew by a picture earlier of former North Glen City Council member Jenny Wilford, who was also a very wonderful, active member. I'll let you go, Jacob.
Great. And then just a few thoughts about what's coming up. The legislative session 2024 starts in a few days, so that will take up a bunch of our energy, and we'll be tapping Councilor Goff and all of the other folks that are plugged into the coalition that want to be plugged in at the legislature. Lots of opportunity for really good bills on climate, also lots of opportunity for things that are problematic or things that could go really well or could go poorly depending on how they're handled. So we will be there and do all the things that we normally do. Fundamentally, what we're doing is amplifying your voices. Our job is to find ways to amplify the voices of local governments in these really key moments, in these key venues like the legislature, and get the maximum amount of impact from that. And that's very much what we do, and we'll be doing a bunch of that in the coming 4 months. There's a few other things I'll mention here briefly. That top bullet, already mentioned it, but it's worth noting again, the IRA and the BIL, these two massive federal funding packages, tons of grant programs. We've been putting a lot of effort into parsing through those programs to figure out which ones are the most helpful potentially to our members, and doing trainings and briefings. We've also now got a new person on board who is a concierge on those federal programs specifically. So if North Glen has got a program in mind that they're thinking about, you all are thinking about applying to, or you want help figuring out among a bundle of programs, which one or ones might be the best fit, or who else is submitting for something that maybe it makes sense to coordinate with, that's the stuff that our concierge, that's her job, is to help you all with all of that work. So that's there will be a bunch of work on those pieces in the coming year, couple of years really. And then a bunch of other really important ones here. I'll just mention one, that next bullet, the second bullet down, extended producer responsibility. This was a result of legislation that we passed a couple of years ago that basically sets up a fee on producers that's based on the environmental footprint of their packaging choices. So it's way upstream, and it creates basically a market incentive for manufacturers, say, who are deciding what kind of material they're going to use to package the product and to ship the product, that the environmental footprint or environmental cost of those choices are now built into the price. It's essentially internalizing these costs that have always been externalized. And then all of that money flows into a fund essentially that will then go out to all of you, local governments and residents, to pay for recycling programs. In communities where the local government is paying for recycling, then the money will go to the local government to refund those costs. And where it's a service provided by a hauler in your community, the money will be used to offset the cost to your residents. So either way, basically, the idea is everybody in Colorado should have recycling service that's as good as and convenient as their trash service, and won't pay for it because the manufacturers and other producers that are making choices about the packaging material that then becomes that waste, that's where the funding is going to come from, those choices. So it creates a market incentive as well as it will take a few years to ramp up, but that's what's happening right now. But it will make recycling much more accessible across the state, less expensive and more consistent and more effective on the Front Range and across Colorado. I'll stop there. I'll just mention, I think that's the last slide. I'll just mention that we alluded to Councilor Goff. You probably don't get called President Goff here very often, but Councilor Goff is the president of the board and has been, as Anita alluded to, been phenomenal. We're really grateful for your leadership and North Glen's leadership. And Mara on your staff is the alternate on the board as well as alternate on the policy and legislative committees, which you also serve on. So we're really, really grateful for the opportunity to work with, you guys have been an amazing partner from the very beginning, from when you first joined. We love working with you. We love working with Councilor Goff. And we've only just met Mara, but we love her already. So thrilled that you are members, would love to help any of you engage in whatever ways you would like to, or if as a community, the city government wants to look at opportunities to engage that we could be helpful on, we're more than happy to do any of those things that are useful to you. So we'll stop there and happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
Thank you. We do have a couple. Councilmember Jaramillo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your presentation, all the work that you do. I just learned a really cool new term, well, for myself, but this is really cool, agrivoltaics. Am I
Yes.
pronouncing that correct? That's, wow, I just read about it, did some research on it just now. Yeah, would you like to speak more about what it is for everybody listening, and also how we can apply those here in North Glen?
So I'm not sure how we can apply them here in North Glen right off the top of my head, but we did work on the legislation that helped create the grants for agrovoltaics. So agrovoltaics is kind of increasing photovoltaic, mixing it with agriculture and other purposes. And so there are grants. I think there's a farm in Longmont, and you're probably looking at it right now.
No.
That uses it. And so it benefits both the soil by keeping it moist. It doesn't have as much direct heat. You have the benefits of solar generation. It can become an additional revenue source for folks in agriculture. So it's kind of one of those win-win-win that we're exploring, and we did work on a bill that assisted with grant funding for that last year. So, and I will confess a little bit that the legislative session is somewhat like childbirth in that it's so much work when you're doing it, you kind of forget things right afterwards because so you can do it again. So I will just tell you, I don't recall every single bill in detail, but that was one of the ones we were very successful and excited about last year.
Okay, great. And for the audience listening, I have the definition from the Department of Energy. It says that it's co-location, also known as agrivoltaics, or dual-use solar is defined as agricultural production such as crop or livestock production or pollinator habitats underneath solar panels or adjacent to solar panels. So
Exactly.
I mean, I could see that at open space, I could see that at our, by our Section 36 up in Weld County, possibly, just where we actually have some wide open space here in North Glen. So that was a really cool component I was interested in. But yeah, I couldn't help but notice when I was looking at the members of CC4A, I noticed that our neighbors to the east and the west are not members.
So Westminster used to be a member. They had a political shift, as you all might recall, but they've had a shift back. So literally had a member of their council talking to me about it yesterday. Adams County is a member, so they are, but you know, because we have a policy agenda that everyone adopts, because we work on a unanimous consent agenda, it's really important, and we are a very well-functioning, very trusting, really, I think all of our members get along really well. We just want to make sure that we grow at a rate that we can retain that trust.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have 3 questions. My first question is on the last slide there. What does ECMC stand for?
Oh, thank you for asking. We are like everybody in government, guilty all the time of using acronyms and abbreviations that nobody else knows what they are. It stands for Energy and Carbon Management Commission. It is the new name of what used to be called the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. And it basically is the rulemaking body and agency that governs oil and gas drilling and all the related activities, as well as now increasingly other things that are sort of like oil and gas drilling, but aren't oil and gas specifically, like deep geothermal or some of those other emerging technologies that involve many of the same technologies for drilling, for the pre-production and for actual production and all of those things, the transmission infrastructure, but aren't necessarily traditional oil and gas. It's a great question, thank you. I'm not sure where to look. Thank you.
So second question, I think this is maybe more of an interest for our residents, and that is I believe last year, there were vouchers from the Air Quality Commission for getting credit for people turning in gas mowers in exchange for buying electric mowers. I wonder if you have any site pictures to how that will look like in 2024.
How it's gonna look going forward?
Yeah, do you want to speak to that?
I'm not sure how the program's going forward.
Yeah, we'll need, if you don't mind, we'll get back to you on that, the specifics. The programs have been pretty fluid for one thing, and more decisions just a month and a half ago, or less than that, a month ago, that will shape some of what happens in 25, 26 and beyond. And we'll figure out exactly what the details are and get back to you, because we don't want to get it wrong.
There's
Yeah,
also a need to give you a complete answer. There is also funding available, and I'm not exactly sure the borders of where it's available, from a settlement with, I believe, Suncor and the Environmental Protection Agency. It was a supplemental environmental plan that will give additional rebates for lawn equipment. So I just want to make sure we give you a fully complete answer, council member.
Thank you for the
Yeah,
question.
I felt like we were caught flat-footed. Some people wanted to take advantage and basically the deadline came and passed and it was too late for them. My last question has to do with slide 9, second bottom bullet from the bottom, talking about a greenhouse gas emissions roadmap. At least I know what GHG stands for. So Dr. Cog approved last year it's a non-binding, but more of a roadmap of greenhouse gas emission policy through 2030 or 2035. And I just wanted to know if you all are dovetailed with that activity.
Go for it.
Yeah. So, wonderful question. This is a separate planning process from the Dr. Cog planning process. This is actually an update to the state's initial greenhouse gas emissions reduction roadmap.
This meeting, what's on?
What's on the second to last bullet on slide 9. And so what the state is doing right now is determining what are the big policy items that they want to take on in the remaining years of the Polis term to try to help us meet our statutorily required greenhouse gas emissions by sector. And so CC4CA has been participating in the conversations, trying to inform, hey, these are things that are important to local government. We are concerned about those ideas because those may infringe on local governments, local control. So kind of trying to shape that conversation with the state. It is particularly important this year because this process will also inform the state's application for climate pollution reduction grants as part of the IRA. So this is a huge pool of funding. They are going to use a portion of this document to be the state's priority climate action plan. In order for the EPA to award funding to the state, the measures that that the state applies for have to be included in this priority climate action plan that is informed by this roadmap. So Dr. Cog becomes important, Councilmember Kondo, because they are also doing a priority climate action plan that will inform how local governments that are within the Dr. Cog territory can go after those grant funds. So related, even though it wouldn't necessarily seem like it, there have been coordination between the state and Dr. Cog to make sure they're not out of step with each other, but they are not identical processes or roadmaps.
And I'll just add that Dr. Cog is a really good example of a venue that we don't engage at very much. It's really important to us that we're never advocating for something that works against the interest of any of our members. And Dr. Cog is a venue that's clearly a sub-state venue that you all and many of your neighbors are part of. So we have been engaging with them in the way that Anita's talking about around how to make sure these pieces all fit together. But we're really careful not to get involved in, say, policy fights at Dr. Cog, because our members are often going to not be of like mind on that.
All right, thank you. This is kind of fun. President Goff. Start using that.
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to thank you both for coming here. And I wanted to just remind my fellow council members that if anybody wants to participate in CC4CA, there's no limit. Like, we could all go to all the meetings if we wanted. I probably don't, but, and that CC4CA is amazing at supporting you. If you want to go testify or give some input in any of these rulemakings, they give you all the information you need. They tell you when it is, where, how to get there, what help you get there if you need it. You can do some things virtually. So if you want to dip your toe in these waters, we've got the great support system to do that. So thank you again.
Thank you.
The one thing I will add to that is we will not put you on our newsletter without you requesting to be on our newsletter, because first off, I believe it's law, but we also don't like to spam our members. So please let Mara or President Goff know if you would like to be included in our newsletters.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you both for such a great presentation, very informative. And yes, learning all the acronyms is always fun, so I appreciate that. I just have a question in terms of the upcoming legislative session, which will start on Thursday. Is there any, one bill that you'd like to highlight, give us a preview for that you're supporting or hopeful for, just out of curiosity?
I appreciate the question. There are a few bills that we've been involved in the crafting, but we don't know what they are actually in the end until they're actually introduced. So we're always careful about not getting out in front and supporting a bill before we know what the bill is. But we've been very involved in a number of bills that are related to air quality. So some of the issues that Anita was talking about around ozone in particular, and or how the state issues permits for oil and gas operations and things like that. So there's probably three air quality bills that are a big deal for us. And then there's another bill that we've been really involved in that would, the legislature changed some of the rules that apply to investor-owned utilities like Xcel a couple of years ago to enable residents and building owners to install more solar on the roof than Xcel was allowing them to do. And we've been really involved in a bill that would do that same thing for co-op areas. Probably a third of our members are primarily served by co-ops. And so for a lot of our members, the co-op piece is a big deal. So those are a couple. The other one that I'll mention is that producer responsibility program, which I described before. There's a really key moment in that program that will happen in next month, where the Joint Budget Committee, which is a committee made up of both the Senate and the House at the legislature, has to approve the plan that does all the things I described. And that's this really key moment. If they don't approve it, then they might have to go back and do a new plan or something dramatic. So we have been very involved in that, and we'll be very involved in trying to make sure that gets adopted.
And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that land use is not gone away, right? It's going to be multiple smaller bills. We have been trying to make sure, elbow our way into the stakeholder table to make sure the voice of local governments is heard and participate in those. So we have not seen final drafting language, but there will be one on transit-oriented corridors. There will be one on parking and parking requirements. So that one I think is going to be particularly interesting to local governments. One's on strategic growth. And on advanced or accessory dwelling units. And then I think on RTD accountability and, I guess transit accountability and transit funding. So those are the ones that we're also keeping our eye on. But again, we don't have a position. We're not saying we're for it or against it. We're just wanting to make sure we monitor it at this point.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you very much. It's very informative just to keep an eye out on some of the things I was aware of, but it's also great to hear from you what might be coming down the pipeline. So thank you so much.
You bet.
No, she just did my legislative committee update for me, so that was great. I'm just going to check that off my list. Councilmember Nowicki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, both of you, for being here. I'm not familiar with your organization until I had the chance to do some homework and get familiar. It sounds like you do good work. I was curious, you kind of mentioned this, and I don't know if you can speak more to this, kind of about federal grant programs that might be kind of available to, you said maybe there are a lot of them? Or can you kind of give us maybe a preview of what might be available to like a city our size, cities in these regions?
I'm going to give that one to Anita.
It is almost a tsunami of federal grant opportunities right now. Between the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, there is historic funding for climate action and infrastructure, and local governments are one of the eligible entities. Also, your relatives, but also your residents are eligible for a lot of this funding directly. And so it is too numerous for me to go through each program. The large, like the big shiny thing that a lot of folks are looking at right now are those climate pollution reduction grants, because that is $5 billion. So they are going to be awarding throughout all 50 states, and there's a limited number of awards that will be going out. So that's one program that basically, that's why it's really important to follow the roadmap, to follow Dr. Cog's Priority Climate Action Plan and the submission that they'll be doing for their application. So there's a lot of federal funding, but we have the concierge to kind of be like a matchmaker, to sit down with our members, understand what your priorities are, where you're shovel ready, where is their readiness that we might have a grant that's available to connect you to. So, I mean, there's funding for water, there's funding for heat pumps. I mean, it's really, there's quite a bit of funding. The problem is federal grants come with a lot of reporting. And so really making sure that you're ready, that it's enough, that it makes sense for your community.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You've mentioned the matchmaking metaphor before, but I hadn't really thought of it. It's like a dating app, except it's bespoke. We figure out the connection on everyone.
It's arranged marriage.
Right.
We are not that in control.
Well, thank you very much, and all kidding aside, we are all also very proud of Councilmember Goff and her leadership with your organization. And so thank you again. And thank you both for being here.
It's great to
Thank
see
you.
you all.
Great, yeah, it was lovely
Appreciate
to
it.
see you. Thank you, have a good evening. Okay. Next up is public invited to be heard. This is an opportunity for public comment on any item not set for public hearing. Statements are limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Statements must be related to city business and limited to matters of community interest. Joanna, is anyone signed up tonight?
Yes, there is one individual signed up, and that is Tom Lampo.
Hi, Tom, come on up. Please state your name and address and provide your comments to council.
Tom Lampo, 3951 Jackson Way. Good enough?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It's good to be back in front of Northglenn and some folks in Pennsylvania. Okay, all right. Happy New Year to everyone. 2024 will be an exciting year, and as we enter the new year, we should all expect to see God's work this year. So, tonight I'm here to pray for the city of Northglenn, but first I want to reiterate to our elected council members that God wants you to stand firm and do your work not as politicians, but as children of God in a political position. Your position on council is important. Cities can influence counties, counties can influence states, and state can influence our nation. And we can get our nation back on track, and it can all start here. So please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, in Jesus Christ's victorious name, Northglenn is your city, and you are welcome here. We need your presence, wisdom, and leadership. You're God, and no one is above you. In Job 42:2, it states, I know that you can do anything, and no plan of yours can be thwarted. Help us to rest in the comfort of knowing you already have the victory of the spiritual battle, and situations are playing out so more people will see that you are living, or that you are the living God who loves all people. We know there can be difficult situations ahead of us, but grant us your comfort. We are your people. I want to lift up our elected council. Right here is where big changes can take place. Each of them has a lot of responsibility. Their decisions can be difficult. Give each member wisdom to make the correct decision and strength to carry out that decision. Let them rely on you and never forget what is written in Jeremiah 32:17. O Lord God, you yourself made the heavens and the earth by your great power, and with your outstretched arm. Nothing is too difficult for you. You, the creator of all, can assist in the city's decisions. Help them to rely on you and guide them. All things are important to you. No decision they have before them is too small for you to care about or too large for you to not know what is right. You have placed them in their positions for a reason. Ultimately, their decisions can be a light. And Matthew 5:15 states, "Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand and gives light to everyone in the house." Their decisions can be a light to influence a country, a state, a nation. Please grant them the wisdom and strength to carry out your will. Lord, I lift up all members of the city of Northglen to you. In Isaiah 41:13, your word states, "For I am the Lord your God, who takes hold of your right hand and says to you, 'Do not fear, I will help you.'" As we enter into 2024, we need you to take hold of us and lead us. Show us how to trust in you and not to look at our circumstances with fear, but with optimism and faith that you are in control and will be our provider. You are Jehovah Jireh, and it is the name we call on to provide for us. Jehovah Jireh is the Lord my power, or my provider. Jehovah Jireh, be our provider. In your precious and holy name we pray. Amen. Thank you, and you guys have a nice night.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who did not have a chance to sign up but would like to speak to council? Okay. Is there anyone on the phone who would like to speak to council? You may press *6 to unmute at this time. Okay, hearing none, we're going to move into communications. We'll start with Ward 1, Councilmember Burns.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. New seat, new year. Happy New Year, everybody. I just want to say thank you to Tom for coming and kicking us off this new year. Thank you to everyone who's here. Welcome to our newest council members. Excited to have you here. I don't have any official updates. I have the Historical Preservation meeting tomorrow and then the Parks and Rec on Thursday, so I'll have updates next time. But I just wanted to kick off this New Year's with a message to all of our residents. The number one question I got asked last year was, what does city council do? And I really want to make it my goal, New Year's resolution, this year to answer that question every meeting and really like show up for everyone. And I encourage everyone who has a question, who has a thought, who has an idea, who has a complaint, please do reach out to us. I answer emails, I answer phone calls, I answer texts. I'm a millennial, I'm on my phone all the time. So please do reach out to us. We are here to serve you, and happy 2024.
Okay. Councilmember Walker?
Thank you. Just want to thank Mr. Tom Lampo too for his kind words. Ms. Heather and staff, I'm hoping some residents requested some updates on some projects such as the Irma crossing. I didn't see anything on the future agendas, so I'd be looking forward to hearing that. And then also, Mr. Corey, I believe this one was in your court about the no soliciting ordinance and the toughening up of that. So I'm kind of curious where those things stand.
I can certainly address that during my report.
Okay, thank you. And the reason I bring that up, especially with the Irma crossing, is Ms. Megan and I both received an email from the Denver Islamic Center there on Irma in our ward, and they were asking about a crosswalk there. And that's something I'm going to look for a little more research on, and I'll be asking the police too, because I know they have a presence there too. I kind of want to understand fully what all goes on there, so I can understand if we need to bring this issue any further.
Okay, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you wanting an update on the signal crossing, which I know we've previously shared information about where it's been at because it's part of the Connect Safer Streets grant through CDOT. So I can see if Jason can grab some information real quick and I can share it under my communication portion, or I can go ahead and just
I just threw it out there just as a heads up. If you have it, great. If not, we can get it offline.
let me see if I can get it. And In terms of the timing of actual implementation, I know the slowdown was with CDOT. And then are you asking for a different item to be added specific to the Denver Islamic
I'm just kind of
Islamic
giving you a
Mosque?
heads up. I was
Okay.
going to be asking some department heads on what all the city does for it to further understand that question.
Okay,
too.
okay, thank you.
And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jaramillo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to wish everybody a happy new year and welcome to our new council members, Councilmember Roper and Councilmember Nowicki. I'm excited to have you both on board and the future years that we will be working together. There'll be some great years to have, and I have nothing to report, just all the festivities that we had over the past few weeks. But as the opening of Prost we had, which was amazing. I encourage everybody to go check it out. And if you're not gonna go for a drink, stay for the food. The food is fantastic. So that's my plug for Prost and also all the other places to shop at North Glen Marketplace. Other than that, the year's just started. It's a clean slate, so nothing else to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to thank the city staff and the other city council members, the mayor, for being so gracious to me and allowing me, the space to just kind of ask questions and learn and be new at this, because it can be pretty intimidating. So this has been a good experience. Just want to express my gratitude to the residents again as well, and echo some of what Councilmember Burns said around, reaching out. I do want, I think one of the benefits of North Glen, one of the things is that we are a small city. It feels accessible. Right? That's kind of what motivated me to get involved in this. And, so I encourage any residents, business owners, kind of anyone in my ward especially, to reach out, whether that be through my email, through text. I'm here to serve the residents, and I just want to make that explicit. So thank you. Happy New Year, everyone.
Councilmember Goff?
Well, thank you, Mayor. Well, January 3rd, CC4CA already had a meeting. So I did attend the legislative committee meeting. And you may be saying some more about this sort of thing later, but one of the things that they were talking about is how we're all expecting large TABOR refunds this year. And so what that means is the Joint Budget Committee is going to have their job cut out for them, because right now they had requested by various, corners of the legislation, $85 million more than they have on their budget right now for the coming year. So that's going to be a challenge. And then I also one of the things that we did, and I wanted to kind of make sure people were aware of this as well, that the CC4CA has a process to review bills. And then they will present members with sort of an explanation, a real simple explanation of what the bill is and its, effects. And part of that analysis is an equity analysis, because that was something that CC4CA did add to our policy statement, I guess you would call it, that we want to make sure that whatever is moving forward in terms of energy or electrification or whatever does not disproportionately impact certain groups. It's something that would be even for everybody. So that is part of our process. And let's see what else. So the Prost ribbon cutting was wonderful. I guess it was like an official grand opening, and the ribbon cutting. So it was really wonderful to go there for that. And just to echo what other people have said, that go check it out. The food is good. And of course, it's going to be wonderful to have our own brewery. I think that's going to be a draw for a lot of people to come and discover North Glen and the North Glen Marketplace. And I think that's it for me. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I have a lot, and it's probably because we didn't have a formal meeting in quite a while. But first of all, I'd like to give a shout out to North Glen Police Department. The mayor and I participated in the Christmas Crusade on Saturday, and it's always a joy to see a lot of disadvantaged families receive gifts and have a better Christmas than they would have otherwise. Also on that same day, and I would like to thank the mayors of course, Madam Mayor, as well as the mayor for Thornton. Because there was a time when the Wreaths Across America, which was taking place that very same Saturday at Ollinger, was at risk. And I think there was a lot of movement that was going on behind the scenes, including American Legion Post 22. And we were able to finally be able to secure some wreaths and recognize veterans there at Ollinger. So thank you for doing that. I also participated in a number of sessions, events across the holidays. But notably, one was with Mayor Pro Tem attending the Northland Senior Organization business meeting, if you will. They're very wonderful people. And it was great to have that opportunity to sit with them and just kind of listen to their concerns. And I definitely would encourage you to go to one of those meetings or attend Crokinole with Chief May. I forget, is that the first Tuesdays now, I think, or first Wednesdays? I don't know if Chief May is in the room. But it's a great opportunity to interact with senior citizens and they'll bend your ear. Also, Economic Development had their holiday appreciation at Stonehawker. Again, a great event. Wonderful opportunity to network and meet a lot of our business owners. Third item, working breakfast with Councilmember Roper and City Manager Guyer. Always very useful to have these one-on-one meetings. And I really appreciate the opportunity to meet together with Heather, with one other of my council members. And I think the next one will be with Councilmember Nowicki. So looking forward to that next session. And lastly, in the spirit of the holidays, what I noted before I left town, and I'm still out of town, we'll be returning here shortly, is that one of the neighbors on my block on 106th Avenue, a gentleman by the name of Manuel, he lives at 60 East 106th Avenue. He got his shovel and a couple of the storms that occurred before Christmas, he was shoveling everybody's sidewalk and driveway, the entire street. I couldn't believe it. And I think it's that level of desire to help your neighbor. And he did it for free, unpaid, which is truly admirable. And I just wanted to give a shout out for him to give recognition to folks who are willing to give of their time and energy. With that, I will yield the floor.
Thank you. Councilmember Roper?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I want to echo what has been said multiple times already, but Happy New Year. And being new to the council, I'm so thankful to the staff and the other council members who have just made this new adventure so seamless. And we've been able to have orientation and kind of catch Councilmember Nowicki and myself up to speed. And I'm so excited about just the team that we have here and the collegiality that's already present within this team, and I'm excited for all the things that are to come. As Councilmember Kondo did share, I did enjoy getting to know him and City Manager Guyer a little bit better and learning more about the city and how it works. The Prost ribbon cutting was fabulous. I'm gonna echo again, if you haven't been, you have to go, it's amazing. I've lived in Northland for a long time and I thought I knew everything there was to know about Northland, but one thing that I've really has started to open my eyes to the amazing people and stories that are almost like hidden gems within our city. And I know at the ribbon cutting, I met the owner of the Phoenix Salon over in the Northland Marketplace. And she's amazing, and what she does is amazing. The many people she employs there, and I had no idea. You can go there and get a tattoo. I had no idea. I think it's what makes Northland special is just all of these stories that we bring together, our different perspectives, just to make this a really good place. So I'm excited for 2024 and excited to work with this amazing team.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So happy New Year, of course, to everyone. And again, welcome to the newest council members. Excited to work with both of you and to have a new teammate in Ward 4. So congratulations and welcome. I do have quite a few things. I'll probably skip a few things just because it has been a while since we've had a regular meeting. and try to just hit the highlights for my council members and for the public. I also echo what Councilmember Kondo said in congratulating Northland PD. There were 2 swearing-ins that I attended, so we have 6 brand-new officers that were sworn in on the 13th. Officers Patrick Evans, Harris, Jeffers, Ole, Salahovic, I think I botched that name, Show. And then also congratulations to former Sergeant Lieutenant, who is now Lieutenant, former Sergeant Scott McNeely, who is now Lieutenant. That was a mouthful, hard for me to say. So very proud of our police department and wanted to make sure I congratulated all of them. On the 18th, I attended the NSO, the Northland Senior Organization meeting, and a couple of things that are coming out of that. One is they are really needing more seniors to sign up for their trips. So if you know any seniors who are interested in attending their trips, they have to meet certain numbers. So that they spend a lot of time discussing that, trying to get the word out to make sure they have enough members sign up for an upcoming trip to Savannah. I believe the deadline is April 12th, so if you know anyone interested in going yourself, please look into that and help them out. A request that came out from one of the board members, and I believe almost all of us, if not all of us council members, did receive this email, and I'm making a request on behalf of this resident, who is also an NSO board member, is she would like staff to look into a 15-passenger bus for the seniors because our senior center is the only senior center that doesn't have a 15-passenger bus. What's happening is they don't have enough room for the seniors during their outings. It's becoming an issue, and they would like to have more seniors go on more outings is basically the gist of it, plus some issues they've had with people being able to get in and out of those vans. It is outside of the budget process, which is why I am bringing it up for protocol, for council members to give direction for staff and to look into what those options might actually look like, whether there's grant opportunities or what that could look like in terms of the cost for that. So that is coming forward as a request that's related to the NSO and direction for Heather.
The request is, would council like to direct staff to study this concept?
The request would come, yes. So because it's outside of the budget process, the request from the resident, of course, is to get a van. But as we all know, we need to look into what the cost would be. So the request is for staff to look into that and what options might come forward.
Heather, what kind of staff time would that take?
It'll probably take a couple hours in terms of pulling together a budget number. I think the part that we really need to be thoughtful around is, do we have the staffing today to increase the programming level that's desired as part of the request as well? So getting a budget number on here's a cost of a van, a bus is pretty simple. It's the connection to operations and the programmatic piece. So if council supports and provides consensus for this request, I'll do my best to try to get this back in front of council in February, March.
Councilmember Goff, do you want to weigh in?
Yes, just to say that I hope that looking into this, from what we heard, if we look into some kind of an electric vehicle, there might be funding.
That's interesting.
I don't know if that'll probably take more time, but just an interest.
So I guess that's the question. So like you said, telling us this is how much a vehicle costs and do we have a budget for it is quick, but all the different funding options may take a little more time.
Funding options, what I'm hearing from the request and what I read is that they'd like to increase the number of trips, so that's where the staff piece comes into it. If council supports saying, we want you to look at purchasing a bus and we want it to be an electric vehicle, then that is helpful to know tonight. Or you say, look at the different options, which could include the possibility of an electric vehicle, because then it would be looking at lead times and any type of cost differential, that sort of thing.
I mean, I'd love to propose that we add this as part of our strategic planning process. This sounds like a great idea, but I don't know that I feel comfortable using staff time at this time of year on this, but I think, you know, we're heading into a pretty significant strategic planning and budget process. And this could be a part of that.
Yeah, that would be fine. One thing to note is, I think, are those trips is through the NSO, and they kind of organize those themselves as well, so through their funding and, because they already schedule their own trips, so I don't know what, that piece I think is important to know, of course, what that would look like. But I would be okay with us moving it to the strategic planning so we can have more information.
This type of request truly fits in the budget process. So, I mean, ideally, if it could wait until 2025 budget process, that's the ideal scenario. If there's a desire, which I read in 3 council members' outreach to me, to have this information sooner for discussion by council, even if it is that the actual purchase is included in the 2025 budget, process, that's an option too. You all need to tell me when you want to have the conversation. And like I said, I can work with staff to bring information back to you February, March on this item.
I don't know, anytime we purchase a significant vehicle, it seems to be wrapped in the budget process, which feels more comfortable to me, but Adam, did you want to weigh in?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to add maybe another layer of complexity here. Are there going to be any accommodations that would be required of this vehicle as well? Again, I don't know what that would mean or look like. But if there's any kind of special accommodations, you know, that might be needed to be made to the vehicle, I don't know if we need to consider that as well.
We would,
Yeah.
if
yeah,
I'm understanding what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Staff would factor in any type of modifications or considerations with the vehicle type in
Right.
terms of who can drive it and all of those things
Yeah.
into providing council with information as to whether or not the request could be met this year.
Yeah, and kind of just saying, you know, I'd rather take a look at that sooner rather than later because, you know, the seniors, I think, want that vehicle. So,
Councilmember Kondo, did you want to weigh in? I don't want to forget you out in cyberspace.
You know, what I recall, and maybe I'm gonna put Councilmember Walker on the spot, I do recall him mentioning last year at one point a desire to have a vehicle that has the right equipment to allow for somebody who's ADA category person to be able to get on and get off. I know that our current existing van, and we've ridden that van, I think we did that during the neighborhood nights or night out, can be very, very dangerous getting in and getting out. So, you know, from a safety perspective, you know, I am concerned about that. I don't want seniors getting hurt on that cheese grater running board in the van.
Can I ask a question? This is truly just an information gathering. Does the organization ever utilize public transportation for some of these, or could they?
Amanda, can you assist with responding to that question for me, please?
Because I know Access-a-Ride has a lot of options.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So currently, we are not using public transportation for group transit. They used to have an ongoing program that allowed us to take trips from the facility to other locations as an organized trip. We do not have those currently.
We don't have them, or they don't offer them?
I believe that they are not offering those currently, and haven't for quite some time.
Councilmember Burns?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm in favor of finding out the process of this, just because I have an inkling, much like with the police vehicles, that it might take a while, even if we find one that we like, for it to actually come in. So even if we start the process now, it might end up being a 2025 budget thing, is kind of like my perspective on it. So I feel like maybe the sooner we get the jump on it, because I don't want to just be caught flat-footed in 2025. Before, what year is it? 2024, okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. The resident who brought forward this request is a former council member as well, so she understands the budget process very, very well and very thoroughly. Or actually, no, not a council member, a relative of a council member, so understands how that works. But I would be for us finding out sooner rather than later, and this is just me voicing the request that came forward, since I'm the liaison to the NSO as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I wonder about, so to Councilmember Burns's point, timeline-wise, because I do feel like knowing the cost of some of these vehicles, it's gonna feel like it's gonna need to be a special budget request or something, special package that we may not be able to afford until 2025 budget season. And then we'd have to look and see if it fits in with taxes. So, so I think I'd like to know from Heather, what kind of, I don't know that it has to be in the month of January, because we're gonna run out of time. But is there a way to look into the options and possibly bring it back as a discussion item for study session, as these are the types of vehicles that are available? This
That's
is-
our recommendation.
Okay.
Yes,
Great.
because Amanda just sent me some clarification information. We have a 15-passenger bus. They're asking for a van. We still need to look at CDL requirements. So to your point, Councilmember Nowicki, I mean, that would be one of those considerations that we need to wrap our heads around. Who has a CDL on staff that can drive the van, as well as looking at the overall cost. So it's easiest from our perspective to, if you provide the consensus, we study session it or have it be a discussion item.
Everyone feel good about that? I know, Councilmember Walker, you had your hand up. Do you want to weigh in?
Thank you. I think my issue will be more from when we have our discussion items. I want to make sure the seniors have a say in this. They asked for a bus, now all of a sudden we're putting electric vehicles in front of them. So I want to make sure what they want is what we're responding to. But that's for later down the road. I said, let's get on this thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would also like to say, I do think that looking at that accessibility piece is important, because, I mean, if the money were to be approved and spent, then we should probably do it right.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to, may I?
Yes.
I just want to clarify, you said we have a bus, but the request is for a van?
We have a 15-passenger bus. You're saying,
Sorry.
okay, are you confusing me via
We have
text
a
message?
15-passenger van.
Okay.
So like a typical, it's the Ford Transit.
Right.
So everybody gets in, there's rows of seats.
Yeah.
There's the narrow row up against the side where the sliding door is.
Okay, and it's the one you guys.
They are requesting a 15-passenger bus that has greater headroom. You can stand up, walk down an aisle, has more ability to have wheelchair seating, has that ability, it's got a bus seating versus van seating.
So, and if maybe I'm jumping to conclusions here, but with a van, you wouldn't need someone with a CDL. With a bus, you may need someone with a CDL to kind of operate it.
And may is the keyword. I have not looked at, that's part of what I need staff to look at.
Okay, cool. Okay.
You want to add?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a thought that I had, I know Councilmember Nowicki was I think he was trying to get more of like, it'll be accessible for people who are ADA, I know not just the CDL part, but also, do you think maybe RTD has some of those similar buses that they, maybe since they phased out that program you're talking about, maybe they're available?
So those trips through Senior Ride were on just a regular RTD bus. They were phased out during COVID. I just sent Kate a message to confirm that I wasn't remembering that incorrectly. And she did just confirm that those really have not come back since COVID. So they were done on just a typical RTD bus. And they're still using those vehicles, just not for those organized trips that they were coordinating.
Okay. Just a
It doesn't
thought,
mean that
since
there's,
you're-
yeah, but we can certainly look at all of our options in terms of vehicles that are out there and available.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any more questions. I just want
Thank
to
you.
finish my communication.
Of course.
Thank you. I had a feeling that one would take long, but I appreciate everyone and all the questions because, well, we have to support our seniors as well. Okay, so I also attended the Youth Commission meeting, and I'm very sad that the 2 youth commissioners who interviewed are not here. I did have the chance to interview both of them, and they are both amazing kiddos, as all of the teens that are on that commission are. I am very excited. During that last meeting, they had quite a few guests. They had Food for Hope. They had Adams County Health Department, I think a Public Affairs Director, I believe is his title, Michael Ruddick there, and 2 students. And so the department is looking at starting a new Youth Health Advisory Council through the Health Department, and I'm very excited because they invited our youth commissioners to be a part of that collaborative process. So excellent things in the works, as always, for the commissioners, as you guys saw with all the work that they're doing regarding drug prevention and drug addiction too. So excited for them for that. Tomorrow, they will have Rep. Jenny Wilford as a guest as well. So they're interested in getting involved in more legislative issues that are affecting youth and mental health especially. Let's see. I will skip over this in the hopes that I can get through this quickly since my last request took a long time. I just want to say congratulations to Jenny Murphy on her retirement. I know a bunch of us were there. She will be so missed. What a wonderful human being. I mean, she'll be around and we'll see her, but she's done so much for the city and it was lovely to see her off. I have 2 great pieces of news that I just found out. CML approved a session again for me to present at this summer's CML conference, so I'm very excited about that. It's part 2 to my presentation from last year. And then I was also invited and accepted to participate in a new Adams 12 Blueprint Task Force, which is an extension of their strategic plan Elevate. So I'm very excited. If I might be reaching out to several of you to get your input as well, but it will heavily look at the future of Adams 12 and all of the wonderful things that they're doing. And there's a lot of community involvement, business owners, parents, students that are involved in this task force. And it's just a couple of meetings, so that's all I have. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, so many amazing communications tonight. I do have quite a few, so I'm going to talk fast. Happy New Year, yes, absolutely. Again, happy birthday to Councilmember/President Goff. Happy birthday! Such a good day to celebrate Councilmember Goff, because it is also her birthday. So it's also my mom's birthday too, so if she's watching, happy birthday, Mom. A couple other things. I'm so excited about our new council, but really looking forward to Saturday. So we will have a full day of team building fun and activities, and got some, silliness ahead and some opportunities for us to get to know each other better and connect. And so I'm real excited about that. Thank you for elevating Prost. That is such just a valuable asset to our entire city and our community, and I know so many of the residents that live near there have taken it on, and they walk over there with their families, and everyone is really starting to enjoy that venue. And what I was struck by at the ribbon cutting and the keg tapping ceremony, like, it was very cool. But what I was struck by, I already knew, but it was nice to see again, is the Prost organization is such a family, and they really take care of one another, and it's a valuable thing to have in our community. So welcome again to Prost, and we're so happy about that. But over there, we haven't really announced it or talked about it very much, but right over there is a whole new set of Tesla superchargers, and If you didn't know, it's right next to Lowe's, and that's also a really great addition to our community. It's centrally located off the highway, so Tesla owners can swing in there. And I have seen communication already on social media from people who are like, this is so great because I can just plug in and go shopping. So they're, gonna walk on into the Painted Tree or get a bite to eat. And the pretzels at Prost. Woo, gotta have one of those. Let's see. Oh, I do have the legislative policy or legislative committee update this time. And essentially, it was a lot of discussion about what is coming up. So we met with Ed and Jennifer, our lobbyists, and they said a lot of things like, well, we're hearing and we've heard. And because the session hasn't started yet. So it starts on the 10th, and they're gonna get to business, and it's gonna be busy, just as Anita had shared. Senate Bill 213 has kind of been chunked into pieces, and it's coming back at us. And so all of those things that she already discussed, the ADUs, there's gonna be things around construction defects, occupancy limits, all of the things that Anita already mentioned. But I think the key is that we stay involved, that CML is already very actively involved, and as the session starts to unfold, we need to pay attention and really be a part of the conversation. So then I am so excited about this next part. So IIMC stands for the International Institute of Municipal Clerks. I feel like we should have her stand up. I know she doesn't want to, but just for a second, because this is such a big deal. So Joanna Small has earned the designation of Master Municipal Clerk. Yay. And so I'm going to read the email that they sent me, which I thought was so lovely. It says, they grant the MMC designation only to municipal clerks who complete demanding education requirements and have a record of significant contributions to their local government, community, and state. And I agree 100%, and I do think you should take a bow, Joanna. Stand up, just wave at us. She really is amazing. If you don't know, she's absolutely fantastic, and I was so thrilled to get this email, and it was over break, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew what we already knew, is that we have a very special person on staff. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
And now I'll turn it over to you. Do you have any update?
I don't have any updates tonight. Thank you, though.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
City Manager Guyer?
A couple updates for council. Going back to the question that Councilmember Walker had, I'm going to follow up with an email in the next day or two. It does look like the construction timeline has shifted in terms of that installation of the crossing. That project at Irma near the dog park has been in the works for several years now. And it was part of our 2021 Safer Streets grant process through the Colorado Department of Transportation. So my recollection is I'm looking at an email from August 10th from Kent Kisselman, our Director of Public Works, in response to me responding to a resident who's been very interested in that crossing. So we apologize for the delay. I'll send council an email to push out information on when we plan for that work to be done on that piece. And then the other piece that I was going to update council on is we did have a closure of the tunnel under I-25 yesterday. The tunnel was cleaned this morning, and there are quite a bit of comments on our social media Facebook post about the tunnel closure. And so I just want to let residents know that we are in receipt of those comments. And this situation was a bio-waste, I use the term biohazard, where unfortunately human feces were present in the tunnel, and that makes the tunnel unsafe. And so staff did the right thing by closing the tunnel yesterday, and we're doing everything we can to prevent these types of situations from happening in terms of regular walkthroughs through the tunnel, but unfortunately it did happen. And thanks to staff for doing the quick turnaround time on getting it cleaned up. It wasn't possible to have the tunnel cleaned up last night, which is why the cleanup took place this morning. So if you have any additional questions on that, please feel free to let me know. And that's all I have.
All right, Corey.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Happy New Year. In response to Councilman Walker's question, the city staff actually met this afternoon to follow up on some of the previous discussions. We are going to bring a proposal to you. We want to go over some of the benefits and risks of our proposal in executive session in a meeting in the next couple months, because this is an area that is certainly high risk and high reward in terms of addressing some of the impacts on our rights of way. But we have a proposal we want to run by you that again is, we think, cutting edge, but with cutting edge, of course, comes some risk.
Appreciate you.
Okay. And that's all I have.
Okay. All right, up next, our interim deputy city manager and finance guru, Jason Loveland, is here with the November 2023 update.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I'll try to go through this relatively quickly, but we also have a couple new council members, so I'll try to touch a little bit on every page, but we won't dive in too deep, just so that they can get a feel for kind of what these are. Although I think they both assured me that they watched these meetings and the finance reports diligently throughout their months of running for office so that they would be completely up to speed, which I totally appreciate. So through November, I'll touch on sales and use tax on page 1, really the executive summary that kind of tries to roll everything together in a nice, neat location. Year to date, sales and use taxes are up 1.6% compared to the prior year. This report, while it's November, it's through sales that happened in October, so we didn't quite hit that Black Friday. We're not reporting on that yet. But within that 1.6% increase, overall auto use tax is up 2.6%, sales tax specifically 1.4%, and then really seeing some positive things on the food tax, which is up 8.5%. Continue, as we have seen all year, the marijuana tax being down 13.5%. Moving along, I will touch on the general fund revenues on page 2. Really an area of focus on these next pages is really that the second highlighted column in the middle, where we'll talk about collection rate or spending rate. That's really how we're going to compare where we are through the year versus the budget. So through November, we're 91% of the way through the year. So if you'll see, in total revenues are $31.7 million, and that is a collection rate of 91%. So we're right on track with what we budgeted versus where we are on collections. Going to the top of the page, we summarize and break out the taxes in a little bit more detail. So you'll also see total taxes collection rate of 87%, and specifically you'll see sales tax of $15 million or an 80% collection rate. As we know, a lot of transactions happen in November and December, so we'll see that number jump from 80% and get much more near and hopefully above 100% of what we budgeted for the year to see some increase there. So just wanted to point that out on this report. Other major categories, in the tax category, other taxes, really that's accommodations tax for the most part. That's up about 50% on the year and makes that line item of other tax of $450,000 show that it's up about 25%. So going down the revenue line, just a couple of pieces above the ones that are above 10%. Intergovernmental revenues, those are, as they sound, intergovernmental revenues between us and the state or county, grant funding. That's up about 12%. Motor vehicle revenues are up, so people were purchasing vehicles in 2023. And then also our grant revenue being collected for our crew team. We're using federal ARPA dollars for that. As they were more fully staffed in 2023, we've seen an increase in that revenue. Charges for services, a couple of lines down of $3.4 million. That's up 19%. Plan review fees are included there. So as we're doing construction and building, there's plan review that's happening in addition to a one-time revenue collection of occupational fees from Comcast of about half of that $500,000 number there. Fines and forfeitures, those are just what they seem to be. Those are court costs collected from fines. The majority of that is traffic fines specifically. Investment earnings, as rates have gone up in savings accounts and CDs and all of our investments, those have been about double from what they were in the prior year. That's why we're seeing such an acceleration and, have collected 150% of budget. So that was a positive. I don't know if it's positive to be that wrong on the forecast, but that's where we are. It's a positive thing, so we're happy about that. So that is the revenue side of the general fund. Total revenue's up about 4.2% compared to the prior year. Flipping to page 3, I will take a look at general fund expenditures. We have this report on an ongoing monthly basis, broken out by departments. So that's the left column that you'll identify the departments. Legislative is city council. And you'll see the spend rate. We'd expect to see that at 91% if we were exactly perfectly timed. And in total general fund expenditures are at $30.4 million or 83% of the spend rate. So we will see some catching up there in December, especially when we do year-end accruals and whatnot for expenses. I'll touch on the percent differences year over year. City manager, again, that's reflective of crew and them being fully staffed and seeing increased salaries and benefits there. Human resources, again, that's a staffing, I don't want to say issue, caused by staffing, being fully staffed, has led to an increase year over year. And then Parks, Recreation, and Culture, same thing, having staffing as we transitioned over the last few years to get more fully staffed. We're seeing an increase year over year. However, everyone is in alignment with the spending rate, so we're in good shape overall in general fund spending. The next fund we'll talk about is the water fund. Total revenues in this fund are at $13.5 million, above the line there. Expenditures of just under $12.3 million. Key areas there on the operating expenditure side of things. I guess I'll touch on expenditures and then roll back up to revenues. Those are flat year over year. The biggest expenditure there below that is capital outlay. There's more detail on all of the capital projects. This one in particular is starting on page 25 of the report. So you'll see a breakdown of all of the projects, what their budgets were, and what we've spent year to date. Specifically, the $5.7 million of waste handling project at the water plant to reuse and repurpose our water, and then the Huron project and street overlay. On the revenue side, you'll see water charges at the top, that very first line of $7.3 million through November, being down 18%. Two major contributing factors to that. One, consumption with a very wet spring, summer, and so forth. Consumption's down 20%. So we did see an impact to revenues with less consumption. The other factor, tap fees were down $670,000, and that's due to Carl's Farm the prior year connecting to the system. I'm going to jump ahead to the next fund. And also, please stop me at whenever. The next fund is the wastewater fund. Total revenues of $5.4 million, total expenditures of $5.1 million. You'll see a slight increase in wastewater charges, about 3.8%. On the operating expenditure side, $2.3 million. Those are down 12% year over year. That's due to the timing of our biosolids removal, just process and invoicing. So we'll expect that to be even and within kind of the expenditure plan that we had for the year. And then again, capital outlay details of that on page 26 of the report are the biggest expenditures. The debt service expenditures, you'll see, a budget of $1.3 million and expenses of $356,000. December 1st is when we make that second payment for principal and interest, so we'll capture the remainder of that budget. There's not budget savings on our debt service. We spend what we owe, but that'll be captured in December. The next fund to touch on, Stormwater Fund. Total revenues of $537,000, total expenditures of $225,000. Stormwater charges are down $29,000. That is $29,000 of one-time tap fees that we collected in the prior year. So no fee increases or really growth to report an increase to those fees. And then expenditures, again, in line with the budget and what was planned for the year. Last fund to touch on is the sanitation fund. You'll see total revenues of $1.7 million, expenditures of roughly the same. Trash charges stayed consistent, being up 1.6%. The second line item, recycling revenue, is up 280%. Of course, this is about $30,000, so 280% sounds way more exciting than up $30,000, but that is due to the $29,000 of carryout bag fees that we're collecting, which is new this year. Otherwise, the budget on the operating side is in alignment, and then capital outlay, you'll see that we've spent a little bit short at this point, and that's just based off of the timing of vehicles, which we just were speaking about earlier today about getting buses and vans and equipment. It's not easy, so those things do take a long time, as was mentioned earlier. And so the same thing is happening in the sanitation fund as far as budget versus what's actually being spent, because we're not receiving the vehicles yet. I don't know. I'll just skip. Okay, so page 8, if we flip over, cash and investments. So you'll see total cash and investments through November of just under $104 million. We have a nice little graph that shows the numbers over time and kind of where we are historically. We are below 2022. That's because we're spending money on projects, which is what we're supposed to be doing. So I just wanted to point that out. Page 9 is a marketplace sales tax history chart. And you will notice the orange column is representative of 2023. And the last 4 months at the marketplace have actually been down as compared to the prior 6 before that. January through June were all at or above 2022 numbers. So there's been kind of a fall off the last 4 months at the marketplace. The next chart shows the sales tax history of all of North Glen. Same analysis here, where 2023, actually in October, caught back up. It had several months in a row over the summertime and fall of not keeping up with the prior year, but we did see a fair increase of October revenues across the city in whole. Next page, page 11, is the tax collected by geographic code. So these are all just the various locations within the city that we've, over time, have identified as boundaries. So you'll see the marketplace, that one kind of stands alone. We have a sample of area businesses over on the far right of the chart. that identifies how things are going. The change and percent change are 2023 versus 2022. You'll see a majority of the areas are down. The two largest on a percentage basis that are down, Washington Point and Huron Crossing. I did want to note that each of those has a marijuana business within them. And so as that industry is seeing an impact, I'm not reporting or declaring that the decrease is only because of those businesses, but they have a fairly substantial role in that whole area as far as when we compare on a broader picture. And that is all that I'm going to cover. And if you have any questions on, the remaining pieces, please let me know, or anything else that I mentioned today. Thank you.
Do not see any hands. Jason, thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, we will move to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
Councilmember Kondo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, I will close that vote, and the consent agenda passes unanimously.
Yes, you.
Pondering your life over there. Okay. All right, moving into some business ordinances on first reading, CB 2014. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
A bill for an ordinance amending Section 4-8-6 of the Northglenn Municipal Code regarding the meeting quorum requirement for the Community Co-Production Policing Advisory Board.
Move for approval. Second.
All right, Joanna, can you provide a summary of this item?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So as the title reads, CB 2014 would amend the quorum requirement for the CCPP Advisory Board. Just a quick little background, the board's purpose is to help implement community co-production policing by being a resource to further advance the city's goal of aligning the provision of police services and resources with a community vision for public safety. So a couple of the board's goals include increasing community trust, enhancing public safety, and ensuring diversity and equity in public safety policymaking. So following an assessment of the board and its functions in 2022, the board's membership was reduced by ordinance from 13 members to 11 members. At that time, when the membership was reduced, the quorum requirement was not adjusted. The quorum is the minimum number of voting members who must be present in order to conduct business. And currently, the board's quorum requirement is 7 members. So the board discussed the quorum requirement at their monthly meetings in November and December. Some of the discussion included the impact of vacancies on the quorum and then also absences when they're trying to obtain that quorum requirement. The board currently has 8 appointed members and 3 vacant positions. In addition, 2 of the appointed members are sworn members of the police department who may be on duty during the meetings, and so they may be called out to respond to calls for services, which creates absences during some meetings. So after consideration, the board recommended unanimously for council to adopt an ordinance to amend the quorum requirement to be a majority of the filled positions. A list of quorum requirements for other boards and commissions was included in the staff memo. The other boards that have a quorum requirement which takes into account vacant seats include City Council, the Historic Preservation Commission, and the Planning Commission. So the proposed quorum requirement in CB 2014 would read, and this would be in section 4-8-6 in the meeting section, a quorum shall consist of a majority of the voting members of the board, excluding vacant seats. And so that the board's intent is to allow them to meet the quorum requirement more frequently while there are vacant positions. So if all 11 positions are filled, the quorum requirement would be 6. With 8 positions filled, the quorum would be 5. If 6 positions were filled, the quorum requirement would be 4, and so on. And I do want to note that there is a community service provider individual who is moving through the application process right now. So the board is hoping to have a 9th member appointed soon. So staff recommends approval of CB 2014, and I am happy to answer any questions.
No question? Okay. Please open the vote.
All right. The vote is open.
Please vote.
Councilmember Kondo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. I will close that vote, and CB 2014 on first reading passes unanimously.
Excellent. Moving on to CB 2016. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
A bill for a special ordinance designating certain real property in the city known as the Deza Estates as a local historic district and amending the city zoning map to reflect the same.
Move for approval.
Second.
All right, Brooke is here, our Director of Planning and Development, to provide a summary. Hello.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Happy New Year. This is pretty straightforward. We've been working on this for a couple years now. We recently submitted for a national designation, which will entitle residents to receive potential tax credits and also furtherance of the state Historic Preservation Fund to help them as well. With this particular request, we'll have a public hearing here in a couple weeks on this, but primarily what we're going to be doing is setting up a local designation which will enable the Historic Preservation Commission to help develop design standards to maintain and preserve the character of the district and also work with the residents on that. There's been an extensive public outreach on this, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or take any questions that we could have for the public hearing if we can't answer them tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Byrne?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say that the Historical Preservation Society worked really hard on this, and especially shout out to Sarah. I know she worked a lot on this, so a lot of hours and love and time and commitment went into this designation. Anyone who hasn't drove through Deza Estates, highly recommend doing it. Super cool. Yeah, so I just want to say congrats to the team. I mean, I know it was a labor of love.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. So the question I have, maybe this is just like way off the, possibility.
It could also just be the state of deterioration. It could be the number of additions to it that may also have an impact to that. With non-contributing status, there's also the potential to bring it back to a contributing status.
I was going to ask.
But that's through, future alterations and effort. And, generally speaking, it's to go from non-contributing to contributing is sometimes a heavy lift.
Yeah.
But it's not
I was
impossible.
going to ask if that was a possibility.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question to refresh my memory, since not all of the property owners did respond. I'm really excited about this. Obviously, it's Ward 4, and, it's just so neat that we get to have this historic designation in our city when we don't really have like an old town. So I'm very excited about this, and the homes are beautiful. But my question is, out of those property owners, if they're not allowed to opt out, right? Because the majority, like, no one is allowed to say, I don't want to be a part of this historic district once the district is like set. Is
That's
that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so one of the things is we're continuing to do extensive outreach, and if council does approve this in 2 weeks, we will continue with that effort. I think the big thing here is that there's sort of a trade-off and benefit where because you're now in the district, you're also entitled to a state tax credit, which can help you with any improvements to the home. So there's sort of a little bit of a trade-off in how to look at that. But we continue to reach out to the residents.
Yeah, that's excellent and very much appreciated. And also, I would think that if anything, it would help increase their property values if they ever want to sell it because it's historically designated. So it's pretty neat.
Anecdotally, if you go down to Inglewood, to Arapahoe Acres, or out toward I'm not sure if it's Greenwood.
It's Inglewood.
It's Inglewood. I was going to say Arapahoe Hills. Is that also?
Arapahoe Acres is Inglewood. I don't know where.
Arapahoe Acres is Inglewood, but just west of that, next to Bomar, is Arapahoe Hills, which is another mid-century mod subdivision. That's the first two. Acres, I believe, was the first National Historic Landmark District for mid-century mod. And if you go over that, those homes are essentially on a whole different price scale than the surrounding neighborhoods. So
Wow.
it's significant.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you so much. Did you want to add something?
No, he's just giving me a hard time because he lives down there. so.
I used to live there, so that's.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
It's an awesome neighborhood, equally worth checking out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
Councilmember Kondo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. I will close that vote, and CB 2016 on first reading passes unanimously.
CB 2017. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
A bill for an ordinance amending Article 15 of Chapter 16 of the North Glen Municipal Code regarding the city's industrial pretreatment program.
Move for approval.
Second.
All right, Tammy Moon, our environmental manager, is here to provide a summary. Hi, Tammy.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I may have to move that down. Brooke is so tall. And I'm so short. Happy New Year, and thank you for having me here this evening. CB 2017, this is kind of a revisit of an ordinance that we had first reading on earlier in the summer for modifications to the industrial pretreatment section of our municipal code, following EPA's corrections, additions, and suggested revisions to the first iteration of this ordinance change. We decided to come back and do this again fresh and new, and it did take the EPA a little bit of time to get these back to us. So some of you, most of you up here have seen these revisions before. They're fairly similar to what was presented in July. Essentially, the first set of revisions bring our municipal code into a line with the federal code. They are required, the language that is in the first few changes are required by the EPA in order for us to be in compliance with federal code and the terms of our wastewater discharge permit. The other section of changes that is pretty substantial here is changes to our sector implementation program for fats, oils, and grease, and those changes allow the city to give leeway to food services businesses to utilize hydromechanical grease interceptors. The code originally did not allow hydromechanical grease interceptors, and this prohibition was put in during a time when those particular apparatus were not as functional and efficient as gravity grease interceptors, and they are now much more well-engineered and do provide substantial protection to our system. So in order to come in alignment with the engineering standards and specifications, we are now going to allow hydromechanical grease interceptors in the city. The other two kind of big changes to the municipal code is revisions to our local limits. These are the limitations for industrial users as far as the pollutants that they can discharge to our wastewater treatment facility. We went through a substantial conversation with the EPA on how we calculated those local limits and what those limits should be. The limits that are new or the updated local limits for the city, for the most part, are less stringent than what we had previously. Thanks to the improvements to our wastewater treatment facility, the Headworks allows us to give our businesses a little bit more wiggle room when it comes to how they, what they discharge into our system, because we know our treatment facility can handle it. Those calculations were based, and the recommended local limits are based on the most stringent part of our municipal code, our discharge permit. There's a number of different parameters or factors that we look at when we calculate those, and for the most part, these are based on the most stringent, which is our discharging stream standards. So they still continue to be protective, but they are more practical for what we are seeing coming into our plant and what our plant can actually handle. Finally, we do have an increase in the fees for permitted industrial users. It's raising the $1 to $500 and $1 to $1,000, and those fees are assessed at the time of a permit issuance. And we issue permits once every 3 or 5 years, depending on the business and the type of industry. So that is kind of the overview of those changes to our industrial pretreatment ordinance, and I'm happy to take questions.
I don't see any questions. Tammy, thank you so
Yes.
much.
All right, thank
Well
you.
done.
Happy New Year.
Well done. Okay, please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
Councilmember Kondo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, I will close that vote, and CB 2017 on first reading passes unanimously.
All right, resolutions, CR 11. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
A resolution approving an agreement between the City of North Glen and American West Construction LLC for the installation of the North Glen Pavilion Monument sign.
Move for approval.
Second.
Tell us about this one. I'm so interested.
Okay, as you may recall, back in October, we presented City Council with a license agreement for a monument sign for Pavilion's retail center there on 120th and Claude. As a result of widening the road, that sign had to come down because it was already in the right-of-way through a previous license agreement. We had to tear the sign down. We found a new location for it. This is follow-up. As part of the construction project, we agreed to replace the sign. So the nuance here is that we said we would replace like for like. Well, they would like not a backlit sign, they want an electronic message sign. So we said, fine, but you will pay the difference for that. So with this, the contract amount for American West is $91,948.98. And the ownership group for the Pavilion Shopping Center, J3B2 Properties LLC, don't make me say that fast, will pay for the difference for the electronic message sign of $28,421.64. We're also asking for a 10% contingency of $9,194 for any unforeseens. We're looking at about a 160-day calendar construction schedule. We're throwing that in. We don't think it's going to take that long. It's more of a question of when we get the subcontractor, the sign company to make the sign, getting out there, making sure it's not cold weather, et cetera, et cetera. But we're basically recommending approval for CR 11 in the amount of $101,143.88.
Any question? Councilmember Goff?
So we don't know what it's going to look like. I mean, we didn't.
We do. It is essentially going to look the same as the previous sign, except for panel channel lettering that it used to have. It'll have an electronic message sign instead.
Okay, all right, thank you.
It's more or less, we're replacing like for like in a new location.
Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Brooke, will J3B2 Properties LLC pay their proportion of the contingency?
No, we did not factor that into the equation.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you for your presentation. In regards to this, and maybe this is kind of piggybacking off Councilmember Kondo's question, is there any date for the ownership group to deposit their portion of the signage upgrade
Yes,
expense?
we will not issue a notice to proceed on the contract to the contractor until they've made their payment.
Great.
So that's the other part of this float date is that once this is, if this is approved by council tonight, we'll then notify the ownership, the property ownership group that this was approved, and then they'll give us a check, and then we will then issue the notice to proceed to the contractor, and that'll start the calendar days rolling.
I guess the only other question, since you said electronic sign, I'm picturing like kind of a scrolling marquee thing. It's not that kind of thing, right?
So what we have is we have regulations that specifically regulate how we call them EMCs, electronic message centers can be regulated, and we do not typically allow scrolling text. It's change copy, so they can hold a static image for so long and then change it, or they can have it where it just looks like a regular sign that has multiple, tenants on it. We also have illumination standards and also timing sequences for how quickly the message center sign can change.
That is all I see, so thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you.
Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
Councilmember Kondo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. I will close that vote, and CR 11 passes unanimously.
Okay, we have two discussion items tonight. The first one is Senate Bill 23B-001, Budget Impact. So Jason Loveland is here to present.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Before you, I presented a memorandum, which I'm sure made perfect sense. But in case it didn't, I'm going to walk through some of the things for a little bit further discussion. So the impact, this has been kind of a topic on our minds during the election, Proposition HH that was presented. Ultimately, that sales tax relief was failed. Then the governor requested a special session to address property tax relief for Coloradoans. So on November 20th of 2023, the governor signed this Senate bill to put in place a temporary reduction of the assessment rates for residential property. That's going to move from 6.765% down to the assessment rate of 6.7%. And then also to increase the amount of tax exempt features from $15,000 to $55,000. So what that does essentially is changes the value that your mill levy will be charged against. So that is the temporary relief in this bill. So some additional things that happened in this bill, this is kind of just high-level summary. The signing or certification of the mill levy, from the city to the counties, changed from being done by December 15th to January 10th, so we have a couple days to get that taken care of. And so the charts that I've provided on the memo really show what the impact was. The impact caused to North Glen from the Senate bill was a reduction in our estimated collections by about $342,000. With that, the table below shows a change from our preliminary assessed valuation to final, total impact being $376,000. It gets a little confusing because the numbers don't line up in a perfect line, which is really hard for me to put this into a memo to say, hey, by the way, the numbers aren't going to match. So I'm here to tell you the numbers don't match. We know why. There's other factors from preliminary to final assessed valuations that can come into play, protests, other calculations by the assessor that may come into play. But overall, the budget impact is a reduction to property tax revenue from $6.6 million in total to about just a little over 6.2 or $376,000 from what we had forecast based off of the numbers that we had at the time from the preliminary assessed valuation. The impact to the general fund specifically is $246,512. And then the capital projects fund, where we collect 4 mills for road projects, $129,794,000. So about that's a 5.7% decrease from what we had planned for as we were going through the budget process. Overall, I think that impact, to the budget in total, while $376,000 isn't insignificant, it's a small amount in especially our general fund of $37 million budget. The impact to property tax being 5.7% matters. It does matter when we're balancing budgets, but as we move forward for 2024, from my perspective, we don't necessarily need to take any action on this. This is more informational, not a request or call to action from council in any stretch, but wanted to share with you, what that impact of that Senate bill was, specific to North Glen. We know that it's going to provide relief to residents and community members. And then, of course, that does have an impact to us. being not as significant as maybe it could have been. Proposition HH, for example, we believe that would have been more significant than what this bill ended up being. And then the last piece that I provided, just as a reference of the last several years of assessed valuation changes. So we have, we're going to show just under 18% of a assessed valuation change from 22 to 23. But we've seen a large change in 2019, and I know in 2017, we also had, or 2015, another 20 to 25% increase. So not uncommon to see large changes in assessed valuation. So I just wanted to share that table. So from staff's perspective, open to discussion and answering questions that you may have. We'll plan to certify, the mill levies with the counties before the January 10th deadline. So is there any questions or follow-up? It is pretty complicated, and so trying to keep it as high level as possible, but there's a lot more to talk about if anybody wants to.
Okay, got some hands for you. Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Jason, I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly, right? So we're gonna have about a 376K bogey. So are we looking at having an amended budget in a month or so, or how are we going to absorb that?
Yeah, so in the, so $246,000 is associated to the general fund. Obviously, the capital projects fund about 130. So at this time, obviously open to council discussion and thoughts on any amendments. My recommendation at this time is that we do not need to make any changes to the budget. However, that's not my budget, so open to council's conversation on that.
So Jason, are you saying that one option is to continue to draw down on the reserve balance? Is that kind of the default position?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jason, you talked a little bit about this, but can you tell me a little bit about the assessed valuations table? What accounts for kind of that variability? I mean, it's kind of all over the place. With the percent change, is that just like the housing market?
So the assessments happen every 2 years, which is why on one of the years you typically see kind of on even number of years, so 2018, you see kind of a flat amount because it wasn't an assessment year, so everything kind of stays stagnant. So even number of years, you'll typically see kind of a flat or small plus or minus. So that's the impact there. And then on the assessment years, on odd years, you end up seeing a change there.
Okay.
So that can be due to valuations for, values of properties. That could be new construction and several factors like that. So mostly based off of property values, so the market, and then if there is new construction. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Councilmember Goff?
So I guess I'm just curious as to when we actually receive this money from, like, what point during the year?
So no money from the state will be collected. This will be through kind of the annual property tax collections.
I thought state
The county.
County, okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry then.
Yeah.
So when do we receive that from the county?
So that's just kind of an ongoing throughout the year. I think, when are most property taxes due? March?
Okay,
So,
so
but
after
the
the-
majority of that gets collected then.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah.
And then, do you think there's any future possibility or any possibility for future changes to this again? Like, you said that, I know this was this bill made it a temporary change. Have you heard anything, or do you have any ideas about that?
I know that they're putting a team together to evaluate more holistically kind of changes to Colorado property taxes. And I know that that's kicking off and getting underway, so other than that, I'm not sure.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, so one thing that popped into my head as we're talking about this, as part of the Senate bill, there was conversation about getting share back or getting made whole. And we would not qualify for two main reasons. One, we're within a county that's over 300,000, a population of 300,000, so that is one factor. And then in addition, our percentage increase, I think that was restricted to less than 15%, and our increase is over 15%. So we would not be eligible to get made whole in any way on that.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, Jason?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
information. All right, the next item, Neighborhood Nights and Festival Lawn Events. Diana Wilson, our Director of Communications, is to present. Hello.
Right, will you guys turn on the presentation?
To advance it.
Want to make sure. There it is, great. Mayor, council, thanks for having us this evening. I do want to take a moment and introduce my events team. So come on up here, you guys. So we have Rachel Henning, who joined us in August, correct?
Yes.
And you all know Ashley, she's been here for 7 years?
8 years last July.
8 years, so she's been here 8 years, so a lot of experience on our events this year. And I'm incredibly happy to say that I am fully staffed in the restructure that I brought to you guys a while back. So I'm looking forward to a really awesome event season for 2024. And these are going to be our 2 leaders for our events. So just wanted to make sure they came and said hi, and if you have detailed questions, they'll be here to answer those. All right, so why are we talking to you today? For those of you who haven't been with us before, our Neighborhood Nights was previously, you guys can sit down, I'm sorry. I won't make you stand up for the whole thing. We had COVID events that we went to local parks and people got food from food trucks, and then we had a tent and gave stuff out. It was all pretty cool. After COVID ended, council expressed a desire to continue to have neighborhood park type of things. We morphed that into Groove Grub and Local Gov, and I made my staff swear to never let me name anything again. So last year, we talked about these events and how they went and how they did. And I want to bring them back to you to kind of tell you what we think the next iteration should be and get your feedback. And then also talk a little bit about Festival Lawn events, because that's a new place. This is only a second, I know it seems like we've had it forever, at least it kind of feels that way to me, but we've only programmed that space as an events team for 2 years. So wanted to kind of talk to you about what we've experienced, what our feedback is, and get your feedback. So like I said, evolution of our summer award events. The rebrand to Neighborhood Nights was successful. We weren't very consistent the first year with giving out our coupons, so this year we made sure that we were consistent. And really, the way we did that is making you do it. And you gave it, anybody who came and asked you for a coupon, you're like, here you go, here's a coupon. So we got pretty good counts on how many people attended. I had been a little bit disappointed with Groove Grub and Local Gov. I had expected bigger numbers, and am very, very pleased at the increases that we had last summer. How many people participated, the engagement that you had with residents. And this is a different type of engagement than ward meetings. And those of you who know, I'm sure you've been to ward meetings, like you have pretty vested people there that have pretty intense questions. It was how do we reach other people that don't always come to ward meetings? So that was the purpose of these events. And your engagement is not as in-depth, or at least unless you get trapped by somebody, but that happens on occasion. But usually you have an opportunity to meet different people from the neighborhood because they're there for different reasons, more families, that type of thing. I think we're meeting that goal, so I'm very pleased with how 2023 went. We had some feedback, so we're meeting our goal, as I said. It's an improvement over Groove Grub and Local Gov. We asked other departments and people like, hey, do you think there's anything we can combine to, step this up? The family-friendly and avoiding the school year was one thing that came up. Everybody loved the $7 coupon, so I was very pleased you guys increase your budget so we could continue to do that as long as you're on board. How do we keep this ward-centric, though? We specifically have this challenge in Ward 3. I talked to Councilmember Kondo and Councilmember Goff. When we put it in their pocket parks, we don't quite get the attendance we want. Their biggest parks are EB Reigns and the Festival Lawn, which would then we get a bunch of people that aren't necessarily from Ward 3. So we did kind of work on that a little bit and have a different proposal for them. So our recommended adjustments were kick off the Neighborhood Night Series with the mayor's event instead of putting the mayor's event in the middle, and then kind of promote it as a series. We also kind of changed up the order, mostly out of fairness, because we go 1, 2, 3, 4, and we thought, well, maybe this year we should go 4, 3, 2, 1, just to kind of mix it up. And they've had the movies at the Festival Lawn, and Parks and Rec was open to, well, Cultural Arts was open to bringing those to neighborhood parks. And we thought they would be a really cool addition for our neighborhood nights. So people would show up, they'd hear a band, they'd get some food, they'd talk to you guys, and then they would see a family-friendly movie in their local park, is one of the proposals there. So thanks to Cultural Arts for being open to that idea and supportive of it. And we'd like to try a tighter schedule. So we did 2 in June, and the mayor's in July, and 2 in August in the past. June was a little tough because it fell really early, so the promotion was at a weird time, and 4 fell when school already started, so people aren't gonna stay super late. So we have proposed a condensed schedule to make it feel more like a series. So those are the adjustments for neighborhood nights. So my question is, do you want to talk about this right now and give us feedback to the recommendations? And I would also like to mention, you know, we're changing these things up all the time because we really want to reach North Glen residents, and we want you to have an opportunity to engage with North Glen residents. So this is some significant change, but nothing is ever written in stone. If we do this year and our numbers don't increase and we don't get families staying to watch the movie the way that we anticipate, then in 2025, we'll look at it again and say, okay, what should we adjust so that these events actually meet our goals of providing a place for neighborhoods to get together and get to know each other and interact, and also interact with you. So I think I will pause here if that's okay with you and kind of get feedback on this. The change for Ward 3, which I talk about a little bit later, is we are actually combining Ward 3 with a movie and concert that's already happening at Festival Lawn, so that one would be on a Wednesday instead of a Thursday. But after talking to the council members, the idea is when we send the postcard to tell people about the event, specifically to Ward 3, we're like, bring your postcard and exchange it for the coupon, so we know the coupon's going to Ward 3 residents, not just random people. We don't have that challenge in the other wards. Most of the people that go there are from the wards, but we do have that challenge in Ward 3, so that's what the council members, actually, I believe it was Councilmember Goff's idea. I'm like, wow, that's brilliant. All right. So we thought we'd give that a shot. So,
Awesome, some questions. Councilmember Kondo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wonder, so last year, I think we had vendors like T-Mobile or Excel, or the electric vehicle folks. This doesn't really talk about that. Will that also be kind of, can you thumbnail that? Is that also going to be part of the North Glen neighborhood night concept?
yes, it is part of the neighborhood night if people buy into that sponsorship level. So we do include these events since they have a band, since they interact with the community, into our sponsorship packages. Our sponsorship packages are not solid for 2024, except for the chicken, right? Right. So we do have one sponsor for sure, but haven't negotiated what events they want to come to yet and what they want to be involved in. So sponsors are still out, but they are a viable option when we offer people sponsorships, and they obviously give us financial support. The other things that we try to focus on at ward meetings are things that are happening in the city right now. So if you remember, 2 years ago, we had comprehensive plan, and they would come and do interaction. Before that, we had sustainability plan, and we wanted to get input at Noel. So we really try to offer up with the city tent involvement we want from people and what's going on at the city right now. So I can't predict that, but it could be something like, you know, hey, this is our new strategic plan, what do you think? Or, you know, this is more sustainability is coming up with the new sustainability coordinator, so maybe it's getting input on some specific issues there. But we try to, just like you use it as an outreach tool, we try to use it as an outreach tool for whatever's happening at the city. Does that answer your question, Councilmember Kondo?
Okay. Councilmember Goff?
So my question is about Pride. I noticed that it's June 10th, I think earlier than, you know, it has been in the past. So I just, are we starting to like reach out to performers? I know sometimes when you wait to the last minute, or not the last minute, but I mean, if everybody's having Pride at the same day, then we have trouble getting people,
Exactly.
I guess is all I was.
Right. So we haven't got to the festival lawn events. Do you want me to jump into that now, or do we have any more neighborhood night questions first, if you don't mind?
I have some neighbors.
Sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
Hold on.
I just didn't want to jump ahead, because.
Okay. Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, so a couple of things. First, I really like the neighborhood nights.
Thanks.
I make it probably annoy my family and neighbors by really trying to get them to go. But I think this is, again, one of the things that makes Northglenn special. I do think it's different than the ward meetings in that it's, you know, a little less formal, a little less kind of stuffy. You know, and I think to Councilmember Burns' earlier statement about kind of dialoguing with the community, I think it's also an opportunity to say, here's what city council does. And here's, you know, so maybe we can brainstorm some ideas around like putting together.
Absolutely.
Do people love flyers?
You know what, I think you could do a display board pretty easily if we don't want to hand out a bunch of paper, but that'd be a great idea.
I'm almost old enough not to be cool anymore, so I'll have to get with Councilmember Burns to like figure out what's cool, what the kids are doing.
So
But I'm a parent now, so I can speak the lingo with other parents. So a few questions. When you say, kind of, how is success being measured? Like, what makes?
So I think
an
it's a
event
variety of
successful?
things. The first is attendance, right? We always track things like how many people are coming. So if you look at the numbers, let me go back, Rock. I based my initial measurement of this on what do we get at ward meetings? Are we getting the same? Are we getting more? I would hope we would get more. So if you can see in 2022, we still got more than we got at our regular ward meetings, but not as much more as I wanted. So then in 2023, you know, this is easily 2 to 3 times what you get at ward meetings. So my gauge is, are we getting a good number of people above and beyond what we usually get at ward meetings? So that was my measure. The other thing I try to measure is gauging our audience of what kind of mix do we have? So if you've been to any of our large events, we have a very diverse community, and we have a large range of ages and family groups and, you know, ethnicities and everything at our events. It's a really huge range. So let's stick with the instead of are the neighborhood pocket park events attracting who lives in that neighborhood? Is it representative is the other thing that I try to measure by, because we want a span of ages, we want a span of different family groups, we want, you know, people who, you know, live there and don't know much about the city but want to come and learn about it. And I've been at these and also had the same question of, why are you guys doing this? This is neat, you know, what for? So just saying that it's a city-sponsored event to build community and get the neighborhood together, and they're like, wow, that's great, you know? So I think the measures are your response, your attendance, and that is truly representative of the neighborhood. But that's personal. Your evaluation may be different, so let me know how you want to measure success if those aren't what you're aiming for. That's what I took away when we started these.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's kind of a good starting point, at least the attendance piece. I like what you've added as well. The other question was, and maybe I'm misunderstanding this, but are we talking about for the neighborhood nights having the band play, kind of a band play and a movie?
Yes.
Okay.
And the way this would work, I don't know if you've noticed, but the bands kind of end when it gets dark, which is right when the movies would start. And I think our cultural arts is interested in doing more outreach to neighborhoods and attracting more families. And so we thought, let's try it. Let's see what we get. If we offer a movie where people will walk to it, it's after the band, maybe music isn't your thing, but, you know, watching one of the movies that people vote on that might be a way to engage more people in the neighborhood.
Okay, I guess with that, I'm just curious about kind of the length.
It will be long,
Right.
but I don't think it's any different than the movies and the concerts at the festival lawn that they've been doing.
Okay. And then I think the last question I have kind of ties in with the discussion around citywide.
I should also mention, we would fully expect turnover. I don't think everybody who comes to see the band will stay for the movie, and I don't think everybody who comes to the movie will stay for a band. Speaking for myself, I had little boys when I was younger, and they would never sit, they'd be the ones running around annoying everybody during the band. But they would sit and watch a movie, depending on what the movie is. So I fully expect a turnover, which also should affect our attendance, and the number of coupons that we distribute and the mix of people that we have. So, like I said, it's an experiment, a proposed experiment, if you guys are on board.
Councilmember Byrd?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess like my question is around like, if people from other wards like float in, because I know sometimes like if people missed Ward 1 because we were first this year, they went to Ward 2's meeting because it wasn't geographically far.
Right.
And I understand like the desire to like see what's going on specifically in our ward, but I also like appreciate people just being engaged in general and like showing up when they can. I think that's important. So I guess like I like the idea of like the neighborhood thing, but I guess I don't hold it precious that like only Ward 1 members come and talk to me.
And I don't think, we don't exclude anybody from any of the events. They're totally open to the public, and they're publicized on all of our platforms. The difference is we do send a postcard to the ward as a promotion, not citywide. And part of that is funding. I mean, you don't want to spend, do we really want to do 5 citywide mailers to promote a concert and a movie? So we specify that ward to do that particular promotion, but we promote to everybody. And I know other people come from other wards, and this event staff actually felt the same way, condensing these so that we don't conflict with school, so that it feels like a series, and kicking off with the mayor's event to promote all of them was also in that vein of, you don't have to live in the ward to go here, and we think it would help with the awareness. And, we didn't do that lightly. That's a pretty heavy lift for staff to put these all in July and August. We already have a bunch of events, but the reason behind it is we may get better attendance, we might have more interaction with people, so it's probably worth it if it's successful to condense it.
Cool, yeah.
Other questions?
That's it so far.
All right, so now we move on to Festival Lawn. So a little bit of history. In June 2022, we have a Bubble Fest. Some of you may not know if you didn't attend, but yeah, we killed all the grass, so we're never doing that again. I shouldn't say we, it was a contractor. It was very, very popular, but not conducive to the site. We had too many people and the bubbles were rough on the grass. In 2023, we had Pride. We had the mayor's citywide event in 2022, which is essentially Groove Grub and Local Gov just invited citywide. And then in 2023, State of the City, which I believe you all attended, so you know what it was. In August 2022 and 2023, we had Dancing Through the Decades, very successful event, continued to grow. So we're pretty excited to move forward. So Bubble Fest, as I said, was too large. Pride actually drew a pretty good amount. State of the City and was at 650, considering we cut it close because of a torrential rainstorm. That was pretty good. And then Dancing Through the Decades, pretty good jump from 22 to 2023. That 1,200 number, I have to be honest with you, we don't want a huge increase on the festival lawn. If it gets bigger than that, we'll have to move it off a festival lawn because the space just isn't conducive to it. But would like to try it again in 2024 and see what we get if it's kind of like this is where it's gonna stay. So our adjustments are pretty minimal, except continue Pride. And it's critical that the Dice Board is supportive of this event. We would never move forward with a Pride event if they weren't. Kick off the Neighborhood Night Series with the Citywide Mayor's event, and then that is essentially the July Festival Lawn event. And continue to try and build on our successes. People seem to like the themes. The number of people that come dressed up to Dancing Through the Decades is cool. It's just like, it's like a small version of Pirate Fest, right? So we're hoping to continue to do that. We involve Gate and Dance, which was neat. And Pride, have we started programming was your question. And the answer is no, not yet. I had to wait till tonight's meeting. If you're supportive, then we will jump right into it. I believe Rachel already has some meeting dates and some outreach that she's doing to find things that could make Pride different from other places. And that also was a reason for the date change. And timing is still up in the air. Do we want this to be an evening event? Do we really want this to be more of an afternoon, day event? And what's the length of the event? So that is still up in the air. But the reason behind the date is so that hopefully we're not conflicting with a lot of others.
Yeah, I noticed Denver has theirs later in the month, but Adams County hasn't noticed or posted or decided.
It's the
whatever.
10th.
Right.
Ours is the 8th, Adams County is the 10th.
Well, it says that, but it says Saturday the 10th. Saturday, June 10th is not a Saturday. So
So their website's wrong, cool.
I don't know what that was, because I was just checking that too, and I go, wait a minute.
Well, we had the same issue last year where we picked our dates first, and then they picked our date. I'm like,
So if we approve it and you get it out there, then maybe they won't. do it on
hopefully,
our day.
hopefully. All right, so those are the adjustments that we recommend, and then just as 2024 tentative schedule, when you throw it all together, this is what it looks like. And I also printed up for you, if you're interested, you don't have to take it, but I have a 2024 event calendar that not only has these events that are newer, which is why we're coming for your reflection, but our traditional events and other departments that have their dates set. So, do you guys want that?
Please.
Okay.
There's a couple more questions.
Thank you, ma'am.
Councilmember Jaramillo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hi.
Hi.
We all love our, all events in the summer and everything, but I wanted to make sure that we're on the same page with North Glen Arts for summer concert series. I know that pretty soon, this is just, as a non-voting member, I know that NAHF may be taking the, hands off the reins for summer concerts.
So they're still doing summer concerts, and you'll see them on the schedule that I'm handing out. And we always work together to make sure that we try and have diverse bands and aren't overlapping there. And their Wednesday nights, neighborhood nights are Thursday nights, except for one of our neighborhood nights, which is actually in conjunction with the concert.
Ward 3,
movie.
I saw
Yeah,
that. That's
exactly.
pretty cool. Yeah, that's just something I was thinking about for the future. I know with North Glen Arts and Humanities Foundation, changing a little bit to their model of what they truly want to accomplish. I know that's something I just want to make sure it doesn't, I gotta make sure there's continuity, because it's always been a really, one of my favorite parts of the year here at our park. And I have heard from many people about the space of Festival On. It's like, we've had them at EB Rains Park before. They preferred that location. I just, that's just what I hear from my
For the
neighbors.
concerts and movies, or, because the other events that we do there are new. So,
Yeah, both. I've heard that, but also we haven't had too many movies happening there because of obviously that's part of it, but, you hear that from your neighbors, and everything, that they preferred that location better across the street, but I understand. With the electricity and everything and the setup to have the tent. I try to explain that.
I think change is hard for people. It really is. I personally love the Festival On space and the events that we do there. I can't speak to how Cultural Arts feels about it, but I do want to be as transparent as I can be as far as we get together, we talk, we try and line out our programming early, so that we don't conflict with each other. But North Glen does a lot. If you add all of our departments together, there is a lot, and there are times when we conflict. And there are also times when, even though you're going to conflict, it's still worth it, because what you're able to secure, especially when this comes to cultural arts, is so unique and so different. You don't want to miss the opportunity. So there is going to be overlap. That's just how it is sometimes. We don't purposefully do it, but sometimes it's worth it if it's different audiences or a cool thing we're bringing to our city. You don't want to miss that opportunity. But I also feel like our attendance at our things are all good. And I know you don't have much to compare it to unless you go to a lot of events in a lot of other cities. But considering our size, just a number of people come to a traditional ward meeting is really unbelievable compared to other communities. And you don't know that except that I have something to compare it to, but your engagement with your community is incredibly high. And the kind of things that you offer at no charge is pretty awesome. So I don't expect those conflicts to make too big of a dent. The biggest complaint we'll get from people is that I can't do both, and that is a bummer, right? It's only so many days, and there's only so much time in the summer, so.
Yeah, appreciate it all.
Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, I'm just getting the hands raised mixed up. Okay, I guess I'll ask my other question about there was some language in there about funding for an event, for the mayor's event and the state of the city, kind of being able to have the state of the city, but kind of not have it the same size.
So
Can you
the first
explain
time that we
a
did
little
this at Festival Lawn, the mayor's event was basically, it was a band and food trucks like the other neighborhood nights. This year, we haven't had an opportunity to talk to the mayor yet about what she'd like to do for hers, but it is citywide. I would assume that we'll have food and we'll have music of some sort. But we did a special budget amendment last year to add a drone show, have a bigger band, and then we did a representation of booths of different things that the city did. It was a pretty big deal. Our staff recommendation this year is scale that down a little bit. It still should be bigger than the ward thing since it's citywide, and we probably should have some, something that makes it unique since it won't have the movie. It'll just have a band more than likely. So what do we want that special to be? And that's a discussion with the mayor. And funding for that event partially comes out of our budget for events, but just like Pride, part comes from the DICE board, and in this one, part comes from the council board, or council budget. So what's reasonable within that budget and what is conducive to our community? We still need to have that discussion.
Okay, and kind of along that same line, is there any leeway with the coupons as far as kind of budget issues? I know that it went from 5 to 7.
That was council's discretion. You guys told us what you wanted the amount to be, and it does come out of your budget. So we pay for the band, porta potties, go and set up and all that stuff. What comes out of the council budget are the postcard mailings to your ward and the coupons.
Out of curiosity, as someone who used to play in bands, what does a band get paid?
We have a pretty big variety. It can be anywhere from like $850 to some of our larger bands, like that 80s bands was like $5,000. So is that accurate?
Yeah, roughly $1,000 for most of our standard bands.
So big range, but our headliners at our larger events are more than that.
Councilmember Goff?
Okay, one last thing I forgot before is I did check, and the Ward 3 Neighborhood Night is July 24th, and that is also the night of the AdCog dinner, and I don't know, does that, if I just we don't go to that, we go to Ward 3, or and if that's something we need to look at?
I think you and Councilmember Kondo should discuss that. If you would rather us change your day, we can change your day.
Okay, all right, I will.
Okay, Councilmember Brooke?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have a question, I just have a comment. I think you've laid out so many great events, not only with our wards, but across North London. It really offers us touch points with different, our constituents and just our community. It really helps to build that joy that we all desperately seek and just deepen that sense of belonging.
Are we done? All right, so I need consensus on if these adjustments are acceptable, with the exception of waiting to see about Ward 3's date, correct? Everybody's good? I got some thumbs up. All right. Well, thank you. I hope this ends on a fun note for you, because we're expecting a really cool, fun event season this year, and we're excited. We hope you are too.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you guys have any final comments? Are you good? Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful.
Thank you, both of you as well.
Okay, moving into public invited to be heard. There's no public left. I don't think there's anyone on the phone either, but we'll give it a second. I wanted to, really quickly, before we adjourn, like, what's the word? I just want to remind council to reach out to Susan with your lunch order for Saturday. So she sent you an email. If you don't have it, look at Google Susan and you'll find it. She needs your Panera order for Saturday's lunch. And then I sent everyone an email, and this was something I forgot in communications, but I think is really important. And I don't know, City Manager Guyer, how best to address it, but I'm pretty concerned about the state of the senior hub. And so I know I shared an email with you. You sent me the news articles, which I had already seen, but was there any other response in the last 4 days?
Not that I'm aware of, unless, Amanda, have you heard anything else?
I have not heard anything else. I did reach out to the county again today, followed up on my email that I sent last week, and asked for a response to the initial questions as well as a few others.
Okay. So council, if you are unsure what I'm speaking about, I forwarded an email I received from, I don't even know if it's a resident or someone that works for,
There was an article in Northland Thornton Sentinel.
yeah,
about
there
this
was a
as
lot of articles about it, and I think it's concerning. I think I'm more worried about our actual residents that rely on this. If you haven't had the opportunity to volunteer with Meals on Wheels, I think it's really, really important that, you know, we at least dig in and try to get some questions answered. I mean, it sounds like it might be due to some financial mismanagement, but at the end of the day, we have residents that rely on it for food. So every spring, they do a campaign, and they get elected officials to volunteer. And every time I do that, I have such a different perspective on the organization and how they really do feed our residents. And so I'm concerned if they're not going to have access to food. So I don't really know what the next steps are, other than to keep pushing Adams County. Is there something else we can do to?
One thing that comes to mind is we can draft a letter from you and the rest of council. So Amanda can keep pushing to try to get information, then we can draft a letter urging something along the lines of finding solutions to figuring out how to fund, for lack of a better way to say it, continue funding the program. And if Amanda gets information that helps us figure out how we need to navigate, we'll navigate the situation, relay it to you and the rest of council, and if there's something in addition, we'll get that information to you as soon as possible. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah, I'd appreciate it. I just really want us to follow up.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Did anyone else have anything else? That was just something I forgot on my communications. I'm getting those emails. And Nick's cracking up over there. I don't know. All right. Anything else? No? Great. Well, thank you so much. And there being no further business, we are adjourned. So Mark Kaiser, do you not get
Diana? Yeah. I sent you a text. Rich said we're fine with the